It's pretty much. Person what? So tomorrow they'll have about a 2-minute hearing. Six of them headed out. They all lined up in the hall. Remarks of that or sounds good.
Good evening, everyone. We will call the February 6, 2012 City Council meeting to order. First order of business is roll call and determination of a quorum. Charlene?
Nordstrom. Mason. Doyle. Sasso. Davis. Peterson. Roberts. Brown. Wright. Laurenti. We have quorum.
We do not have an executive session tonight, so next order of business is the invocation and Pastor Jim Sorum from Bethel Assembly. Everyone, please rise.
Thank you, Mayor. Let us pray. God Almighty, we take these few moments to ask that you would grant us tonight your wisdom, your thoughts. God, I pray that you would not only give us those truths, but you would help us tonight to apply them with a sense of justice, sense of grace. And God, I just pray that each councilman, council person, the mayor, city officials in this room, I ask that you would be with them and give them your thoughts. We always want to take this moment to thank you for our military that are serving abroad, and we ask that you would be with them and their families, and our air base and their families at Ellsworth. And tonight I just pray that your will would be done as we listen to you and are guided by you. In your name, amen. America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Jim. Next order of business is adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions, changes to the agenda for tonight? Please hit your lights. Seeing none, do we have a motion to adopt the, we'll go to Richie Nordstrom.
Sorry to be a little tardy on the light here. I believe it's 80, I'd like to add a liaison report from the Journey Museum. I believe it's 89D.
We have an 89B, which actually appears as, oh, D, all right.
D is in Delta.
9D.
Yep.
Museum report. Any additions? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda with that addition?
Second.
Motion by Mason, second by Davis. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And we now have our Citizen of the Month, and if Pat could meet us down front along with the Ward 5 Alderman. February 2012 Citizen of the Month is an individual whose second career has been public service to our community. We are pleased to present this award to Patricia Zent of Rapid City. She is a resident of Ward 5 and was nominated by her Ward 5 council representatives Bonnie Peterson and Ron Sasso. She is a school nurse with the Rapid City School District with Wilson Elementary. And not only does she care for the children with compassion and kindness, but also reaches out to the homeless and poor in Rapid City. For 5 years, she has gone out every Sunday to the Rapid Creek area. She meets a few other people there, and together they set up their card tables and start serving food. She receives and distributes donated clothing, hygiene products, and packaged food. Patricia is not willing to turn away from problems and takes action to help her fellow citizens week after week in all types of weather. She is grateful for the friends she has made and is inspired by their humor, gratefulness, and care that they have for one another. She is currently writing a book about her experiences and the people she serves. Her involvement shows a true commitment and care for our community. Thank you, Patricia, for your dedication to the city of Rapid City. And I'll turn it over to Bonnie Peterson to read the executive proclamation.
Thank you. Whereas the City of Rapid City has established the Citizen of the Month Award to an individual whose second career has been public service to the community, and the February Citizen of the Month is awarded to Patricia Zent of Rapid City. Patricia is a school nurse with the Rapid City School District, resident of Ward 5. Whereas Patricia has served the homeless and extremely poor in Rapid City with compassion and kindness for the past 5 years, and whereas Patricia goes out every week to deliver food, clothing, and hygiene products to people in need around the Rapid Creek area, and whereas Patricia has seen a need and has taken action to help make Rapid City a better community. Now, therefore, we, Alderman Bonnie Peterson and Ron Sasso of Rapid City, on behalf of Sam Quaker, Mayor of Rapid City, do hereby proclaim Patricia Zent as the February 2012 Citizen of the Month, recipient in recognition of her innovation and leadership and the many contributions she has made to our community.
All I'd like to say is my real belief in life is if you can ease the life of another, do it. You don't have to go far away to do that. You look out your front door, and there is pain, there is suffering, and there are needs to fill, and it's up to the rest of us to do that. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Now is the time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. Okay. We'll first go to Susan Keynes. Susan?
I want to thank the City Council.
Susan, if you could come forward so your comments are on the record. Yes, please.
I'd like to thank the City Council for selecting Pat Zent for this award. As far as I'm concerned, she's a modern-day Good Samaritan. I am an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ, and am familiar with that story, but the highlight of it is that she serves people who are different than herself many times. She has used her own funds to do that, much in the same way as the Good Samaritan did. And so I do want to thank you for recognizing that work, and it's very essential. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll recognize Jim Peterson.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. I actually have two brief comments to make. One is, again, I reiterate what Susan said about Pat. Just a little quick history there. About 11 or 12 years ago, we had this incident in our city where 8 homeless folks were found dead in the creek, 8 in the span of a year. And while we, the citizens of Rapid City, appreciate what you all do, and the police and the fire department and so on and so forth, once in a while, citizens have to step up and fill up the gaps. And that's what Pat does. And how this happened historically, because kids at Stevens, including my daughter, were concerned about what was happening down there in the park. They started this feeding program. And for 2.5 years, they didn't miss a Sunday. They were down there. And Pat's been there for 5 years. And what that looks like is while we're home, watching a football game on Sunday afternoon when it's snowing, Pat's down in the park. So it's an amazing thing she does. Secondly, different issue, actually, it's kind of on the agenda, but in front of you tonight, there's a resolution to support, again, the citizens that stepped up on an entirely different issue, and that was this billboard issue. Because we have been trying for decades, to clean up the sign blight in our community. And that's why when you look at the current statute, the preamble, the whereases, talk about the blight on our community, the beauty, the safety, all those issues. They didn't just happen to get there. We've been addressing this issue for decades. And so finally we had the wherewithal to get together this perfect storm where we got these initiatives passed. And so here we have 5,000 or 6,000 signatures we gathered, 15,000 or 16,000 votes, hundreds of people involved. Matter of fact, tomorrow 2 vans full of those people are going to go to Pier at 5 o'clock in the morning to testify in front of the Transportation Committee on House Bill 1200, which is Kirkby's bill that tries to give local control once again back to communities in South Dakota. So here's the deal. The citizens of Rapid City have spoken, and we need your unanimous support for that resolution when we go and stand in front of that committee tomorrow. And we invite you to join us in the van. We've got plenty of spaces at 5 a.m. and anybody care to join us. I know Sam is. That's it. We need your support. We need you to support the people. They spoke to you last June, and we want to carry that message unanimously to Pierre. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. We'll recognize Mary Jo Farrington. Mary Jo.
Thank you. I just want to, first of all, thank Ron and Bonnie for nominating Pat. The first time I went down there to observe, what impressed me so much was her attitude that this wasn't just charity, these were guests at her table. And she treats everyone who comes and declares hunger or need with such respect and courtesy. And she has been such a fabulous example of someone with great love and humility. And I think it's kind of appropriate that she's Miss February, because that's Valentine's and that's all about love. And Pat exemplifies love. Thank you.
Mary Jo, and we'll recognize Carol Merwin. Carol.
Yes, I'm so happy that she gets out here because she does not toot her own horn. And Mary Jo said just about everything I was going to say. The humility and the love, the genuine love, and the example that she is to a lot of young people. People at the, young women at the Unitarian Universalist Church, I know, admire her for what she does. So she's a good example, and this is not, it's not charity for her. It's just love.
Thank you. We do not have any more general public comments, so now we'll move on to our non-public hearing items, and we'll start with public comment for items 2 through 76. Can we have a motion to open public comment, please? Second. Motion by Brown, second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We have a speaker request to discuss items 3 and 4, and I want to remind everyone that regarding items 3 and 4, this is to set for hearing only. This is not the time for debate regarding those licenses, that it will be on February 21. But with that, we'll recognize Stephen Westlink, representing the Hookah Lounge.
Good evening. I'm here as the corporate counsel for the Ifrit's Hookah Lounge, and there's been a request submitted in writing, and I'm here to re-urge that this matter be reset, the set for hearing action be reset to the next meeting on the 21st. We received notice from Chief Allender that he was going to make a recommendation against the transfer of the licenses. That only came in a few days ago, and even in his letter, he suggested that it was short notice and that we could request the council to postpone this to the 21st.
Okay. All right, thank you. We do not have any additional speaker request forms for items 2 through 76. Did I miss anyone? If not, do we have a motion to close public comment?
Second.
Motion by Roberts, second by Peterson to close public comment on items 2 through 76. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We are now on consent items 2 through 73. Any council member would like to remove an item from consent? Please hit your lights. We'll go to Charity Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull item number 48, if I may.
Okay, item 48. We'll recognize Steve Laurenti.
Item 39, please.
Okay, so far we have 39 and 48, and we'll go to Jerry Wright. Jerry? 45 and 70. So we have 39, 45, 48, and 70. We'll recognize John Roberts. Okay. Any additional items? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve items 2 through 73 with the exception of 39, 45, 48, and 70 for separate consideration?
So moved.
Motion by Davis, second by Doyle. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on to item 39. This is a Public Works item. Gary Brown, can you read this into the record for us? Item 39.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. 39. Acknowledge 2011 through 2012 Deer Management Report. Move to acknowledge.
Second by Roberts. Any discussion on that item, item 39?
Yes.
Lights, okay. We'll recognize Steve Laurenti.
I'm just looking at the item here, and we're looking at, I think it was for this last year, for the 2011, 2012 deer management plan. And I guess all I'm seeing here are the expenses, so I'm a little concerned about the $23,162.23 that we're spending on the deer management plan, because I don't see anything here about the program itself. What I'd really like to do is continue this for a couple of weeks, maybe to give staff some time to provide us the program itself, because I don't see anything here that, as far as what is the goal of the program, where are we, how are we doing against the, or towards that goal, what's the performance of it? I mean, is it improving something? And so I just want to, I guess, discover some more information about the program. I don't know if there's somebody here who can answer my questions, but $23,000 of the taxpayers' money concerns me without knowing what the goal is and how we are performing to that goal. So I'd like to make a motion then to continue it for a couple of weeks if we need to.
You're not able to make a motion right now, but you will be after we go back to the council for more comments.
Okay.
We'll go to Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I haven't asked, but indirectly I've asked Jerry Cole to come forward on this. But continuing would create some problems and some issues. There is a bunch of information out there on this, Steve, or Alderman Laurenti, if you would like to see it. I give you kind of a heads up there, and thank you for the opportunity to give me a heads up on your question. October 11th, there is quite a bit of information on this. And then also the Parks Committee got together and there was additional information submitted on that. So there's a wealth of information on this program. And Mayor, if it's all right, I can yield to the floor if Alderman Laurenti has got some specific questions for Jerry Cole.
Steve?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have some specific questions about the program because I have read some of the stuff that is available, and those questions still linger as to the definition of the program, what its stated goals are, and how we are performing to those goals. And I haven't seen anything that references that, and so those questions for me still linger. So those are the primary questions that I have, just knowing the cost of it here. I yield the floor.
Okay.
Thank you. Each year we bring forward through the Urban Wildlife Committee, we do a survey starting in October. We survey an entire city trying to find how many deer per mile are in the city. The Urban Wildlife looks at that. We confer with the Game and Parks Commission. Over the course of, since 1996, except for 2 years, we've looked at the line of where the deer per mile are. We go through the Parks and Recreation Board. We supply them with the information. And then we come to Legal and Finance. We supply Legal and Finance and then City Council with the information of the deer per mile and the target numbers that we want to see each year based on the history of the program. And City Council gives permission to apply for the licenses to the state. The state issues those licenses, and we take the deer. Since 2004, the program changed from when we harvest a deer to take them to the processing plant and then give the processed meat out to the mission and other needy organizations. The plan changed to, at that point, give away the deer upon approval of City Council. We came forward and asked that in 2004. And so the deer is now given out to the citizens to process themselves, those citizens who come forward and call for the program. This year, we decreased the number by 100 because the line on the chart went below the level of where the stated goals are, and I can't remember, I don't have that in front of me, but I think it's 3 or 3.5 deer per mile is what we're looking at. And we brought forward the recommendation from Game Parks to take 200 deer rather than 300 deer as we did for the last 4 years.
Steve, you still have the floor.
Thank you. I did yield, so thank you for giving that back to me. Jerry, I have some additional questions, but I don't want to slow down the meeting because I know we've got some other issues that we're going to be talking about tonight. But for the sake of, I can talk to you offline about where we're at. I guess my questions are still unanswered as far as where we're at, as far as the definition of the program, how it got started, for what reasons, and what things have to happen for somebody for us to take a deer. I mean, those are all the questions that I still have, but I think it might, for expediency, be better if we talk after the meeting, so if that's okay, Mayor. But I would like to continue that item. I'd like to keep this going forward because I want to make sure that we get some good answers and definition on this program, because we're spending over $23,000 here on this program. And this is a lesser amount, I'm assuming, because you're saying we took 100 less deer than we did the previous year?
That is correct.
Okay. So the costs were considerably higher last year, so I have some concern about the cost of the program.
Steve, if I could jump in, this is an acknowledgement.
Yeah.
And so, just to add a little bit of clarity to this, there was a public vote, I believe it was in 1995, and the program has been in place in some degree or another since then. And Jerry and I met the other day with the Urban Wildlife Committee, and the program is in the process of being reevaluated and calibrated. But this is something that the people of Rapid City asked for. It is something that needs to be looked at on an ongoing basis, as any program would. But my suggestion to you is, if your questions are not answered, you have every right to add an item to an agenda for further discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. I yield the floor.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman Lorenzetti, prior to the meeting, you gave me a heads up that, again, I thank you for giving me that opportunity. I sent you an email prior to the meeting, so I'm not using emails during the meetings. But anyway, there's quite a lengthy article in that it explains the deer management plan, gives a lot of history. So I appreciate your effort to keep the meeting moving along. So I'll yield the floor also, Mayor. Thank you.
Any further discussion? I believe the motion is to acknowledge on item 39. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 45.
Thank you, Mayor. 45 is to acknowledge a report on update on pine beetle emergency, and I move to acknowledge.
We have a motion by Brown and a second by Peterson. Any discussion? We'll go to Jerry Wright.
If Jerry Wood, I'm going to ask him to come back up to the podium to update the council. I'm sorry. But we had a meeting last week, and the program is going with great success, but I think we need to be prepared to come up with some more money and be aware of where we are as a status. So, Jerry, if you'd please update the full council. Thank you.
Jerry Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. On Tuesday, I gave a report to the Public Works Committee. At that time, we had 354 properties that we had inspected. As of today, we have inspected 478 properties. The number of infested trees that we found as of Tuesday was 557. As today, we have 720 trees in the works. The average cost of those trees are about $133. The program goes out and has contractors cut the trees down, and we reimburse the landowner 75%. As of last Tuesday, we had, in the number of trees, we had $75,000 worth of reimbursement trees in the works. As of today, we have $97,000 of reimbursement trees in the works. That is not including staff expenses, machine expenses, vehicle expenses, gas, cars. That expense is probably right now are around $15,000. So add another 15 to that 97, and we have a little over $100,000. We have appropriated $150,000 for the program, and we are about a third of the way through with the properties.
Thank you. Still on the floor.
Thank you, Jerry. And I'm sure we'll be bringing you an update after our next incident command and next public works. And I know we're working with fire department for wildland mitigation as a part of this, and it is a big issue. And I think the Parks Department's doing a commendable job. I think we just need to be prepared to maybe get out a little more money to do it right. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to acknowledge that in the coming weeks, John Roberts will be traveling to Washington, D.C. on our behalf to testify, going along with Jerry to try to solicit some more funds for this very important project. And John's got some personal experience in this from his land ownership in the hills, and I look forward to hearing not just the story of how he spent his own money, but hopefully how he can get some federal money to help us solve some of the problems. And I look forward to the report that John's going to bring back, and I just wanted to personally acknowledge and thank him. Thank you, John.
Any further discussion? The motion is to acknowledge. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 48, Jordan, can you read this into the record for us?
Thank you, Mayor. Item 48 is to confirm appointment of Kathleen Sheets, Barb Storbeck, and Sarah Fielder to the Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities for terms to expire December 31st, 2013, and I move to approve.
We have a motion by Mason and a second by Sasso to approve, and we'll go to Charity Doyle. Charity?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I have a question for you. I haven't gotten a definitive answer on it. When we're looking to staff these committees, is it required that people live within the city limits, or is it not? Or does it depend on the committee, and where can I find the answers to all of those questions?
It depends on the committee. I didn't realize you had a question on this.
I didn't catch the address on one of them outside the city limits until yesterday.
Okay. Which one?
The first one,
Okay.
I believe.
Well, my suggestion, we've been looking at that. We've had a number of committees that have people from outside of city limits on them. What I have been trying to do, because of the questions that have come up, I've been trying to defer appointments of people that live outside of the city limits until after Gary Brown and his committee have had a chance to meet. And so my suggestion is that you offer a motion to approve the other two, continue Kathleen's appointment until I have a chance to
Well,
look
I
at the
guess
bylaws.
before that, though, I mean, were there other people that applied, or was this it? I mean, if it's about giving preference, we may want to consider that if there was a city resident applicant as opposed to an outside the city limits. But if not, then that's why I'm asking you, is there a problem in appointing somebody outside the city limits, or for the purposes of this committee, is it not a big deal? I just want to make sure we're above board and doing everything consistently, because it seems to waver from committee to committee.
Okay. I know, Charity, that there was a fair amount of interest in this committee. And so
Would you like the opportunity to relook at it?
I would.
Okay.
Okay. So
Then I would make that motion to approve, a substitute motion to approve Barb Storbeck and Sarah Fiedler, and thank you.
Okay, we have a motion by Doyle and a second by Peterson to approve the appointments of Barb Storbeck and Sarah Fiedler and continue Kathleen Sheets' appointment back to, I'd say back to, is that what you were, okay. Any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll go to item 70. Gordon?
Thank you, Mayor. Item 70 is to request Laurenti, Roberts, and Mason to work with staff on drafting a revised code of conduct and bring it back for discussion at the March 14, 2012 Legal and Finance Committee meeting, and I move to approve.
We have a motion by Mason. Do we have a second? And a second by Roberts. And we'll go to Jerry Wright. Jerry?
Curious why this is here and what the motives are, who requested it. And I might add, being politically incorrect at this point, that we have a good working council, but it appears to be slanted with a certain group that are to feel or think a certain way, and I see there's obviously a lot of members excluded. Can I ask the question why?
Okay.
It doesn't seem like to be to use a congressional or a national, it doesn't seem to be a very bipartisan committee. Thank you.
We'll go to John Roberts.
That's a very good question, Jerry. And I was going to make a little bit of a friendly amendment to this because Ron Sasso got a hold of me earlier today, and he wants to be added to this. But he's the only one that's actually got a hold of any of us that wanted input on this too. So anybody that wants input about this, we would love to get together and hash it out. So anyway, I'd like to add Ron Sasso to this list of myself and Steve and Jordan Mason.
Go to Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to comment and respond to Mr. Wright's question here. Ultimately, the council will all have the opportunity to participate, and there's absolutely no barriers or partisanship in a nonpartisan government such as ourselves to call any of us and put in whatever contributions you'd like to make to this. The reason this is coming up for myself, and I guess I've made this pretty clear at the Legal and Finance, but I'll reiterate the point. I do think that there's some of the definitions we currently have in our Code of Conduct. I've been pretty consistent about this with all of our policies and our ordinances. I like to see definitions clearly defined on what we mean by what we say. And so I'd like to see that actually fine-tuned. In addition, there's some areas in our current Code of Conduct that I would like to see also how we, the process by which we execute it. I've noticed that with a lot of our policies, and this is one of many, but that we should probably specify a way of implementing and executing that. We actually did get a great suggestion by Alderwoman Peterson at the Legal and Finance to actually look at combining the current employees' Code of Conduct and their manual and the way that they would execute it with ours. That's something that I'm definitely very receptive at exploring, especially based on the standard of, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and I'm fine with that. I think that would be a concept that we can explore. But the main two reasons for myself in looking at this is I'd like to fine-tune it to specify exactly what we mean in the Code of Conduct and also delineate the process at how we execute it and administer it. Thank you.
Bonnie Peterson.
I just wanted to weigh in on the question because I was the one that made this motion. This was brought forward, and it was really kind of vague about what was going to be put together, and so I just felt like, well, you guys go back and work on it and then bring it back to us. So we knew more. It was just like little bits and pieces of what they were looking for, so I just thought it would be better to have them bring back something more concrete so then we could evaluate it at that time. So it was my motion. Thank you.
Charity Doyle. Okay. Ron Sasso.
I think, if anybody else wants to be involved, I know when I put my request in, it was welcomed. One of the things I know I'm looking at this from the standpoint that as a licensed professional counselor, we have a code of ethics that we have to follow. There's also a best practices that is out there, and that's something that as looking at particularly politics, unfortunately when somebody hears the term politician, automatically the first thought is it's a bad word. And as representatives for the city of Rapid City, I would love to see us be able to, one, have a code of conduct that is reasonable, workable, and isn't as easily potentially manipulated for something bad for political purposes, but also look at potentially setting standards of what we should be aspiring to do as elected officials, which wouldn't be at the same level of the code, but at the same time having standards of where we want to go. So those are just some of my thoughts and why I wanted to join the committee as well. So thank you.
Jerry Wright. Jerry?
The other question I had was who requested this? Did the three of you, or did you, Jordan? Are you the requester?
Jordan?
No, Jerry, I did not initiate this. I received a phone call, I'm going to say Thursday of almost a week ago, 2 weeks ago, from Alderman Laurenti concerning, his impetus and want to address this. We did discuss it, and frankly, looking back, I probably would have liked to have discussed it a little bit more. I've thought about this in the past and discussed it with, a number of you before, off and on, talking about, some of my concerns with it. But I saw the opportunity when Mr. Laurenti called me to, maybe bring forward some of the things that I have talked about in the past.
We'll go to Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was a little concerned about this on Wednesday at Legal and Finance because it was dropped on us. It was a walk-on, and it seems like this is one of those things that it's extremely important. It has long-lasting ramifications, and I really questioned why it was walked on rather than brought through the normal channels. What was the hurry-up on the thing? So I think the legitimate question that was asked last Wednesday was not only what's the intent, but why now? Why not take the normal path? And obviously that raised some red flags. It caused me to think about why three individuals are bringing it right now. So that's one of the questions that I have. And the other one, and Steve, I'm going to ask you to respond to these. I see your lights up next, so maybe you can deal with both of them. But since you're the lead author on this thing, you had, and I'm going to preface by saying I have no problem with what Jordan is saying. To review it, I think that's healthy for us on anything that we have to make sure that they're fresh and up to date and applicable to the situations that have arisen in the past that have caused things to change. I'm a little concerned because one of the comments that Alderman Laurenti made Wednesday was that he'd like to do away with the code of conduct. Alderman Mason's talking about revising it. I don't have a problem with that. I'm very concerned when you start the discussion of doing away with something that has these kinds of potential ramifications, and especially when you take it to the step that, as Mr. Laurenti said the other day, he didn't want to mention, but did, the censure, and that this item was used as the path to that. It looks to me like we're resurrecting something that I had hoped was an ugly part of our history that we could get behind us, but my warning lights are going off all over the place here. I'm very, very concerned about what it is that the intent is, why the hurry up on it. There's just a couple different sides of this that just smell to me. So if somebody could take away my fears on this one, I'd sure appreciate it, because right now I'd love to turn on it just the way that Alderman Mason has, and that is let's look at it and revise it. But when I look back at the tapes from last Wednesday and what I remembered, I'm very, very concerned. Thank you.
We'll go to Ron Sasso.
I appreciate the comments, and actually one of the things I know prior to me even taking office, that was something that I know had crossed my mind and was on my list of things to accomplish over a 2-year term. And when I saw it coming forward, I thought, okay, this is a good thing. I think looking at our code of conduct, I believe there's definitely room for improvement. I don't look at that as being something that's solid. It's possible as a committee looks at it, reviews it, that it may come back to that's the best that's there. But I like to think that it's possible to generate something that is better, and I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that, or if it should be as big of a discussion as it is. So, thank you.
Steve Laurenti.
Well, I just wanted to qualm the fears wherever they are, because I think they're unwarranted. I actually brought this forward, and it may be, I will apologize, I'm one of the newest, I think I'm the newest member on the council, so I suggested that it be added to the agenda, and I had it listed on the agenda for the Legal and Finance meeting as discussion and direction by the Legal and Finance meeting. I thought that was the most appropriate way to bring it forward. I don't have an agenda on this item. It's one of the things that I witnessed before I was on the council. The censure did happen. I think the best way for us to move forward is to make sure that it never happens again. There's no need to rehash that whole thing and all the details, but the reality is we need to acknowledge it by correcting what allowed that process to happen. And that is my only vested interest. To Alderman Mason's comments, that is why I actually put it on the agenda as discussion and direction, so that we could begin to basically form it at the Legal and Finance meeting, which we have done. We've created a group of people who will, and anybody else, of course, I think that's been extended to people who want to be involved in formulating something more concrete for the council to discuss in the near future. So there is no political agenda, but there is a very driving force for me to make sure that we do things right going forward. So that would be all of my comment on that. Thank you.
And John Roberts.
I really appreciate everybody's comments on this. I did want to get rid of this too. I didn't like the way I don't like the way it's written. I think it's way too vague. I think there's no punishment for the fact if we do, or no set punishment for the fact if we do break this code of conduct. You know, that's pretty up to whoever is holding the political power at that time. I like Jordan Mason's idea of revising this, setting guidelines, setting rules, setting, you know, I don't think we need to get rid of it, but I do think that we have to write it so it's fair in the political arena. So I'm looking very forward to the discussions that we're going to have on this, and anybody is welcome. I mean, we're not trying to hide anything. We're not trying to do anything, you know. The code of conduct is important, but if it's not spelled out legally, binding, all it is nothing. You know, you can use it any way you want to use it, and that isn't fair. So we need to put some guidelines to this thing and make it so it's workable. So thank you.
Charity Doyle.
This may be a little bit rhetorical, and it's not really directed at anyone in particular, but I'm curious. It appears to me that we operated without a code of conduct until 2006. So that's something to consider. What was the political atmosphere then? Why was that instated or thought to be a good idea in 2006? Maybe that's something we need to look at in moving forward and making it better. But why then and why now? So that question keeps coming up.
Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. It's actually a really good question. I was originally just going to comment on the idea of completely eliminating a code of conduct. I don't think that that's seriously being considered at this point, and I would also like to quell the fears. I've used the example of several different city councils and some of the, frankly, elaborate and audacious examples and debacles that we've seen over the past couple of years across the country. Obviously, there is a need for a code of conduct, and I think it's proper to have one. I guess I would actually like to take an opportunity if Mr. Landine, our city attorney, actually knows the answer to Ms. Doyle's question. I'm frankly interested in hearing why that is. You know, why 2006? What initiated that?
I cannot specifically recall what happened or why the council at that point approved the code of conduct. I mean, we could go back and look through the minutes and see if there's any guidance there. But as I'm sitting here now, I cannot answer that question.
Thank you, Mr. Landine. Very good question. I'm definitely curious as well now that you bring it up. I hadn't really thought about it from that point. Thank you.
Jordan, I think this would need to be researched further, but my recollection is that there was one that was put into place for city employees, and this one was put into place at the same time. I think that's what it was. Any further discussion? We do have a motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries with 1 no from Jerry Wright. Okay. We are now on items 77 through 90, non-consent items. We now open public comment for items 77 through 90. Can we have a motion, please?
Second.
Motion by Roberts, second by Peterson. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Our public comment period is open. We have a speaker request. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's back up. I apologize. Items 74 through 76 were continued consent items. Would anybody like to remove any of these items from continued consent? Okay. 75. Any additional items? Seeing none, can we have a motion to approve to continue 74 and 76 through to February 21? Motion by Wright, second by Peterson. Did you need to discuss those items or no? 74 and 6? No. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 75, Gary, can you read this into the record for us? Item 75.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. A request by Centerline for Lazy PG Land Company Incorporated for a preliminary plat for proposed lots 4 and 5 of North A subdivision, legally described as unplatted government lot 2, Less North subdivision. It's located east of 5th Street, lying south of East Stoomer Road, and on the north side of East Stoomer Road, west of Shelby Avenue. And I open it for discussion on the floor.
We'll go to Jerry Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my understanding that this came in late on a technicality, and the owner's representative is here. And I understand that also there is a, I don't know if the right word is a pending offer, something that could possibly be delayed if we were not to forward this at this time for approval. That's the request of the owner is that we approve it tonight and not continue it till the 21st. I understand that all the details are submitted, they just weren't on time, and it's a unique situation. So if the council is willing, I'd make a motion that we do approve this under that stipulation that it came in late, but it was a detail with a wharf or something like that. And are you okay with that, Brett? If I don't know if I can make the motion because I'm discussing it, I guess.
Brett?
That's the situation, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there are actually two cases. This first one has to do with a preliminary plat. Planning Commission is sending it to you for approval with stipulations. There were a few stipulations that needed to be satisfied before it was approved by council. Those stipulations have been met, so you can act on it tonight if you prefer. The additional item will have to do with the warp, though, and that's coming up later in the agenda.
I would ask for a motion to approve, if that's okay.
We'll go to John Roberts.
I'll make a motion to approve.
And do we have a second?
Second.
We have motion by Roberts and a second by Wright to approve item 75 with stipulations. Tibbs. And we'll go to Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Jerry brings up a very valid point, and that is that if the owner's representative is here, I'd like to hear from them as to why they're asking for a change after the late opportunity to file. So just so that we're all aware of it, it sounds as though we're not all as informed. So thank you.
We'll recognize Lawrence Kostaneski.
Lawrence Kostaneski with Centerline, representing Lazy P6 Land Company. I'm sorry, would you repeat the question?
Ski, basically, Jerry had said that you were here to explain or could explain why, even though the filing was late, you'd like us to push it through yet tonight. So I guess I'm looking at, the purpose of those filing dates are, I'm worried about the precedent that we set, that suddenly it becomes a soft date rather than a hard date. And one of the concerns that I've got is that you've got 10 council people up here that are not, most of us, professional engineers. I guess actually we're about 20% that are, but most of us are not. And one of the things that I depend on is that it gets to staff in time that they can review it and tell us what action is in the most prudent form professionally. So if we start pushing past those dates and they become soft, all of a sudden it gets filed this afternoon, the staff doesn't have a time to look it over, and now we're making decisions without proper counsel, and that concerns me. So, but I'm also, Ski, I'm very concerned. I don't want to stop a sale if it's something that's moving along for you. So give me a reason why I shouldn't be concerned about that drop dead date, and why it's okay for us to push it through.
The short answer is because this professional engineer and your professional staff says it's okay. All the stipulations required to get it past this stage have been met. I mean, I understand your concern, and I was here when the council adopted that. It was because people were bringing in plan sets on Monday morning and computer models, and the staff was going, no, we can't do this. But it was never meant to punish anybody. It was just to make sure that the staff wasn't inundated on Monday morning with things they couldn't possibly review before Monday night. And actually, it's not the preliminary plat where the information was delayed. It's actually the warp, which is attached to the variance. Yes? So this discussion is academic, I guess. Because this is preliminary plat, and there's a variance that's a companion to this item. Do I have that right, Brett?
Brett.
Yeah, there are two items. One's coming up later, and that has to do with the warp. There were stipulations on in both instances. The applicant has satisfied the stipulations.
That's item 93.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Ski, but you opened the door. I got to ask the question because I can understand the answer that you gave me as far as why this date can be overlooked in this particular situation. I'm okay, but you brought the question that this was never meant to be a punishment. Mm-hmm. The inquisitive mind, I have to ask, do you feel you're being punished by this being pushed back?
Not me personally, no.
Your project?
My client probably, because he's on a really short deadline, and the staff worked very hard for about 3.5 weeks, phone calls, meetings, to make sure that we all converged on this day. And the dots that connect are preliminary plat with all of its steps has to be in place before a final plat, which is the key to land transfer, before the final plat can even be started. So the final plat is sitting, idling, waiting for this approval to be done, preliminary plat. Final plat submitted tomorrow or Wednesday. Staff can start working on it immediately. And that happens all the time, by the way. The only reason you're getting a glimpse of it now is because this is sitting here wanting to be continued because a piece of information from actually another item didn't get in until Thursday morning instead of Wednesday afternoon. I thought you'd be thrilled to take things off your agenda. Evidently, I was wrong.
Thank you, Ski. I think that once again, the issue that I had with it is I want to protect the staff, and you've been here, you understand exactly
Oh, yeah.
what I was after.
And believe me, if they didn't feel protected,
No, I
they'd
understand.
be speaking.
I understand. The other side of it was, I think you've clarified what you meant by punishment. I was concerned that you meant that we being the city, that someone here was intentionally trying to slow the project down, in difference to that there might be some financial repercussions. And that's what I started this out with, is if there's a sale or something
Intentional,
going.
I don't know anything about
Okay,
intentional, but
that was what I wanted to clarify, was I want to make sure that there was no implication that we were doing anything intentionally. So it
I
looks
would-
like it's, what you're saying is, this is the path that it needs to go to get the project moving along in a timely fashion.
get the transfer done, yes, sir?
Thank you very much for the additional help.
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? Motion is for approval with stipulations. And we'll go to Richie Nordstrom. Richie?
Mayor, I need staff to help me out, to walk me through this a little bit. I apologize in advance here for these questions. Brett, can you kind of summarize what we were just explained here on item number 75?
Well, you've got two items. This one is the preliminary subdivision plat. The existing platting ordinance requires the preliminary to come to you for approval. And then what the applicant had mentioned is that he still has a final plat that he will need to go to after this is complete. We have a filing deadline, and he was unable to meet that deadline. As a result, this item was to be continued until the next meeting. He has since submitted those items. We have reviewed them and approved them, and therefore, the only thing that's holding up the project is the continuation.
Mayor, if I may ask one more question. Is this normal procedure, or is this a practice that we've done in the past to waive a deadline like this? And I guess I can ask Brett if that's appropriate, where that response needs to come from.
Right.
It's my understanding this has been done before. This isn't necessarily a unique case. I think it's up to the council to look at each one of these individually, make a determination on whether or not it's in your best interest, city's best interest, to go ahead and approve this tonight.
Mayor, one more question. Steve, do you understand my concern is that the arbitrary deadline there is a deadline that's set up that is not arbitrary, but this came in after that deadline? Do you understand where my concern is that?
Not really.
Oh,
Not
okay.
not in this particular instance.
Sure. I apologize if I'm not explaining it thoroughly.
No, you're
My
explaining
side.
it fine. We just have a difference in philosophy.
I see, okay. All right.
I know exactly why the deadline is there.
Okay, all right. So I hope you appreciate why I'm concerned about the deadline, and then we're giving a waiver on the deadline. Am I making myself clear?
Absolutely clear.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I'll yield the floor.
Any further discussion? The motion is to approve with stipulations. See no further lights, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I'll be back.
Okay, we will now go to non-consent items 77 through 90. Do we have a motion to open public comment on 77 through 90? We have a motion by Mason and a second by Roberts. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We're now on public comment. We'll go first to Bobby Sunby on item 85. Item 85. Identify yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Whoa, I was afraid that was going to happen.
name is Bobby Sunby. Thank you for allowing us the chance to have a couple minutes here this evening. This is regarding the rezone request for the northwest corner of Catron and Sheridan Lake Road, and have a PowerPoint presentation. So I don't know if we turn the lights down or what we do here, but I'll get started here. It's the first request, and so I'll be brief here. I know you guys have a lot on your agenda, and we don't want to hold anything up. That's the house that currently exists on the corner of this intersection. And what we would like to do with my folks, John and Kathy Sunby here, we also own the house with Kibby Conti right here. And Kibby's father was going to buy this house years ago, and then he did not buy it, and so we bought it with Kibby. Anyway, you can see that the house is directly south and adjacent to Calvary Lutheran Church, which is here. It's directly across the street from Security First Bank. And what we are proposing is a small, nice real estate office up to around $100,000 improvement and upgrades to the existing structure, so it maintains a residential character. And that's kind of a representation of what we have in mind. So someone had asked for an aerial photo of the intersection, kind of showing what the situation is there now. You can see the entire east side of the intersection is general commercial, to my understanding, including 5 liquor establishments, 2 liquor stores, and then, as I said, a church on the north side. So there's a lot of commercial in the area. Some other commercial on the west side of Sheridan Lake Road, Creekside Office Plaza. As you can recall, that structure right there, that's the corner of Jackson and Sheridan northwest corner, which is the recently acquired by the DOT. It was a podiatry building. And this is the corner of Corral and Sheridan. That's commercial also. And then further past our property is another intersection with the storage place. So as you can see on the west side of Sheridan Lake Road, all the way from Pizza Hut down to that corner pantry area where Ham Storage is, there's 6 major, I guess you might call them arterial intersections. And every single one of them, the northwest corner of that intersection is commercial, with the exception of ours. There's a plan for the parking. We did meet with a neighbor, and we had proposed 3 separate parking plans, and she was most excited about this one, which kept the parking in close proximity to the building. So there's 8,657 vehicles per day at this intersection. The home per rapid map is 19 feet away from the property line. And it's been tough for us trying to find and maintain good tenants at this property. The neighbor, as you can see, the previous owner left because of the noise, and it went into foreclosure.
Bobby, would you please wrap up?
No, I'm sorry. Okay. I'll just let you read this, and we'll be back. I know we have to, the request is for future land use, and so I just thought, well, while we're here, we could do this quick. There are no covenants on the property, and we'll come back to these issues. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bobby.
Next, we'll go to Kent Haig to discuss item 88.
Good evening. I'm Kent Haig, 1120 Regency Court, Rapid City, South Dakota, managing member of Altaterra Development Company. And tonight we are before this body to request the final approval of the program, the project plan for TIF number 70. TIF 70 was passed, the district itself was formed in 2008. Since then, it has been collecting the increase in increment since 2008. We've recently submitted this project plan when sometime after an original one that was submitted did not, was withdrawn by the applicants, as I recall. We were not part of that one at all. This one, we believe, is a straightforward, it has an emphasis and actually an exclusionary emphasis on infrastructure that's regional in nature. As you may be aware, or may, the particular parcel that this belongs to is right on the east side of Highway 16 from Moon Meadows Road, Moon Meadows Drive, and Moon Meadows Drive would continue on straight through our property. Historically speaking, we've owned this property for approximately 3 years. We've had a number of inquiries. However, it's always contingent upon, and the discussion always ends up revolving around, when will you get city water and sewer and other infrastructure? And it's been absolutely and is absolutely essential. So it would be tonight. We also, my brother Rex is here to add a few comments. Karen Bowman, we worked with her office and the other offices of the city. It's been a very constructive, very positive experience, and Karen and the staff has been invaluable in formulating this. And we've taken pains to make sure that each and every step of this is something that would be meet with the approval of the boards. First, for the TIF committee, then the planning and zoning, and then legal and finance. We believe it's a good program. It's a straightforward, necessary program to get and extend city utilities to its borders on Highway 16. As you recall, Highway 16 is the funnel for approximately, I would hazard to guess, approximately 80% of the tourist traffic that comes through to Mount Rushmore and the Black Hills. We want to make sure that that is done in a very first-class fashion, and that it makes a strong statement for the rest of for all those who see it, for all those who come to Rapid City. And I would yield to Karen or my brother Rex, whomever would like to make comment. Also, Pat Zent is my mother-in-law. I got to admit that she's excellent. Love her. No mother-in-law jokes. So long as she doesn't make lawyer jokes, then we're good. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Rex Haig.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Rex Haig. I live at 1721 West Boulevard, and I am part of the Alta-Terra group. We're asking support for this TIF plan tonight, and I think that's the first distinction. We're here for the plan, which is the statute mandates once there's a district in place that you need to, the city passes a plan to meet with that district and fit that district. And I think that the plan that we have tonight accomplishes three really important goals, not only for the city to meet some obligations that they have in getting water and sewer infrastructure to a place that they've annexed in. It's good for us as landowners to get this property moving for development, and I think it's good for the taxpayers because of the way this one is set up and for what it accomplishes. As Kent said, we have to back up a little bit historically because this is a little out of the ordinary. This TIF district passed 3 years ago, actually, and since that time there's been no plan in place. It was a different group at that time that came forward, and as Kent said, we don't know whether it was drawn or not approved. But since that time, our group has picked up the pieces of this, tried to put together a plan that doesn't have any fluff in it. There's nothing here particularly on the land for the development group. It is simply to extend water or sewer primarily to the property, and then bring water across the street under Highway 16 to accomplish the goal of having water and sewer to the property. The other thing that it does, and I think is we've tried to work with the city because this is a very important point, not only again for us, but for the city primarily, and that is Samus Trail at the top of the hill as you come up back towards Rapid from Reptile Garden. Samus Trail sits at the top of the hill, and it's both the city's wish and the state's wish that not be an intersection at that location. It's a dangerous place. The city's plan, and this plan follows the comprehensive plan, is to bring Moon Meadows across And that is being accomplished in part by this TIF plan to bring Moon Meadows, and it goes into our property, and we have donated the H lots so that Arterial Street, which as I understand from the city's comprehensive plan, will eventually connect back up with 79. So we have cooperated with the city to give those H lots so that Moon Meadows can come across and do what it's supposed to do in the long run. Those two basic goals, getting water and sewer to the property, infrastructure, and working with the city to have that road there are, I think, as much the city's goals as our goals. And we're very happy and excited about this plan. We've had great cooperation from the staff, and we believe it's going to fulfill the mandate of the city to provide the infrastructure to the area that's required when you annex. And this property's been annexed, and it doesn't have any services to it. So that's, I guess, part of the responsibility, and we ask for your support, and certainly we'll be around for questions if you've got any about the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll recognize Dawn Apis on item 88.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Dawn Osbos from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I am a consultant with the Haig brothers and working on the project. I just also wanted to comment, I'm here just for support and to answer other questions, but that staff has been remarkable in helping us work with the project and to make sure that we reviewed not only with engineering, with planning, but they did add some dollars and cents for us on some of the numbers that you see because they felt we were a little light, particularly in grading in some of those areas. So we have worked really closely with them in making sure that we have enough dollars and cents covered, and then, of course, the developer has also made sure that its financing is in place for this and has been approved for that to cover this. So we are set as far as meeting all of the proper procedures, except for, of course, this meeting and getting your final approval. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll go to John Gomez, also on item 88.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is John Gomez, 9406 Silver City Road, Silver City. I am a partner in Alta-Terra Development. I am proud to be a partner with the Haig brothers. I want to encourage you to vote for this TIF. This just provides basic infrastructure of water and sewer for this property. Obviously, I think the city has worked very hard on this, and I think you would agree that this is part of the strategic growth of Rapid City. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll go to comments on 89C. We'll first go to Mike Kwasny. Mike?
Hi, my name is Mike Kwasny, 1512 Lark Drive in Rapid City. Simple comment. We voted. Thank you for backing your vote. And I invite any of you to go with us as we go to Pier to protect this vote. Thanks. We go tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Mike. And we'll go to Terry Olson on 89C. Mr. Olson.
Mayor, Council, thank you for your time tonight. My name is Terry Olson. I'm with Lamar Advertising. We want to go on record that we are in opposition to the referendum. We believe it's ill-advised and inappropriate for Lamar to comment and the city to pass any resolution when there's pending litigation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And we'll go to Pat Hamilton, 89C. Pat?
Hi, my name is Pat Hamilton from Rapid City, and in my definition, civilization means that we take a look at individual interests and then try to see what can we do for the global good. Rapid City voters voted that balancing act between the global good and individual business interests and individual interests threshold had been met in this community. They said, you know, we've got a good balance. We need a mix. We need to have some of that advertising, and we need to have some of the individual needs met, and we think that's the ceiling right now. So that's what our community voted for. I would like to see you all respect your citizen bosses and advocate and support the resolution that's brought here before you. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to Lisa Modrick on 89C. Lisa?
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members, for having me once again. We gave you a holiday. You ought to feel all rested and ready to go. We're certainly ready to go. We're going tomorrow. I don't even think I'm going to have time to put my makeup on. I got to get up at 4 in the morning. But I feel it's that important to go and protect this vote. So please, you, all of you, protect the vote of the people with a resolution that has teeth in it. We've got to take this before our state legislators. That's where it's at today. This has been a long journey. You and your previous council over the last decade have been addressing the questions raised by citizens and their concerns of why Rapid City has too many billboards. Through many changes in sign code definitions, meetings and discussions, how to clean it up, by use of task forces throughout the years, numerous task forces, variance and appeals sign codes, other meetings, more meetings, executive meetings, 2 issues being brought before you, and finally addressed with ordinances placed as law by 66% of your voters and of this community. Billboard control is permitted in this city, and Rapid City has regulated with size, spacing, and lighting. And now to include the type of off-premise billboard sign technology should also be part of what you're supporting. What is happening in Pierce should embrace each of you, all of you, whether you're running again for office or you're still in this seat today. And I just want to say, you are still in this seat today, and we need you to protect this vote. It is the responsibility of you, and it is the vote of the people. It will take our City Council support and direction and legislation to the legislators in Pierre to get back the municipal control on behalf of your community and its citizens. Please support the resolution, a resolution that has teeth, and give direction to our leaders in Pierre to release this back to you, the City of Rapid City, and all cities in the state of South Dakota. It's very important to your citizens. It's very important to the citizens around your community, our neighbors, and our borders. Please take care of us and help us get this back to you. Sioux Falls has home rule. They have some protection. This is all we have. So we're counting on you. Take care of us. Thank you.
Thank you. We do not have any additional speaker request forms on items 77 through 90. Did I miss anyone? Okay. Do we have a motion to close public comment for 77 through 90? Motion by Roberts, second by Peterson to close public comment for items 77 through 90. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Public comment is now closed. We now go to ordinances. Jordan Mason, item 77, please.
Thank you, Sam. Item 77 is second reading, ordinance 5792, and it's supplemental appropriation number 1 for 2012, and I move to approve.
Motion by Mason, second by Nordstrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. 78.
Item 78 is second reading, ordinance number 5796, an ordinance to prohibit animals which disturb the peace by amending section 6.08.090 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move to approve.
Motion by Mason, second by Roberts to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. 79.
Item 79 is first reading ordinance number 5772, an ordinance adopting new subdivision regulations by amending Chapter 16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move to approve.
We have a motion by Mason and a second by Roberts to approve 79. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Item 80.
Item 80 is the first reading for ordinance number 5767, and an ordinance to modify the length of term of the mayor by amending section 2.12.020 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move to deny.
We have a motion by Mason and a second by Roberts to deny. Any discussion? We'll go to Jerry Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. I've publicly stated and have shared with my council members, fellow council members, that I feel that in the interest of good government for the city of Rapid City, that we need to lengthen term lengths from 2 to 3 minimum. And I firmly believe that because it is a significant investment for an individual, especially for the mayor or a person running for mayor, to make that commitment for a very short period of 2 years. I think the 3-year term would give that person that's considering running for the office the opportunity to weigh his opportunities of employment by himself or his employer or the council, or excuse me, the mayor's office. And the 3-year term is long enough to give that person a chance to maybe make it financially and personally. I think the other thing that we need to see in Rapid City is a longer term for stability. And I know there are people out there that question whether we should or should not, but I do believe there is a need for our people to be in place a little longer than they are and be out of the every other year fighting a campaign, raising money to be reelected and so forth. And I think it would give them more time to dedicate themselves to the duties of their office. It would give them more time to learn their job, to learn the staff and the mechanism, chemistry, and so forth of this community. Rapid City is a very rich community. It has a lot of history. We're the Hay Camp. I think we need to move into the next century or this century with a little stronger government, and I think stability would do it, would help, and that's why I totally support the 3-year term, and I'd ask for a friendly amendment to change from denial to approval for a 3-year term for Mayor of Rapid City, and it would be effective at the next election.
There's been a request for a friendly amendment.
Or can I make that?
Not anymore, but you could make a substitute motion. We can come back to you.
Okay.
We'll go to Jordan Mason.
Call the question.
Oy.
Are there any objections to calling the question?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Jordan, did you want to float a motion to call the question, or do you want to withdraw?
I'll withdraw.
Okay. We'll go to Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a substitute motion and maintain the floor. The motion would be to go to a 3-year term for the mayor.
Yeah, we have a motion by Davis and a second by Nordstrom to go to a 3-year term for the office of mayor, and that would be starting in the 2013 election, correct, Dave?
Correct.
And you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This thing has been going on forever. It's probably second in its life to the sign code debate. You notice that I've grown whiskers while this thing has been going on. It's that bad, and they're gray to boot. The argument on this thing has gone every which way from Sunday, and I could honestly say that there are some reasons that I say leave well enough alone. It's worked for 100 years, and that there's no need to make a change. But there's some very compelling reasons that I believe that a change is necessary. First and foremost, I think the citizens of Rapid City are being dealt a severe injustice by only having half of this council eligible to run for mayor without the consequence of losing the best representation that they have. Half of this council that sits up here in 2013 could run for mayor and come back the following year and keep their seat. Half of this council, in a poker term, has to be all in. They have to walk away from their constituency. They have to walk away from the ward that they have been chosen to represent and the background that they've built and the historical knowledge that they've built, they have to walk away from that. This is taking our brightest and our best and telling them that if that half of the population wants to run, they don't count. That reason alone is one that I think we need to make the change. We've jokingly called it the Weifenbach effect because Ron got caught in it last year. He had to walk away from his position to run for mayor. Secondly, it's been said many, many times that let's leave it up to the people. Folks, I am the people. You voted me to represent you. It is a representative form of government, and I'm going to tell you, I'm standing here tonight to do my job. You elected me. If you don't like the job I do, you've got three options. Number one, you can vote me out. It's going to be a little hard since I'm not running for re-election, but you could vote me out. Number two, if you don't like the fact that I am impotent up here, and that's really what this council has become, our inability to take action, we have made this whole issue just that. And our form of government gives us at that point, if you've got a government body that will not do their job, if they will not take the action that we've been elected to do to represent the people, you can bring forward an initiated measure. The other side of that coin is if you don't like the job that I'm doing, we have the option of a referendum, and you can undo the action that we've taken. But all of these involve us as our representative form of government representing and doing something, taking the action, and not hiding behind, well, let's let somebody else do it. I know it's kind of touchy at this point because the chamber has been one that has supported the change, but I find it very ironic that the top award that the chamber gives out every year is called the George Award. And the reason they call it that is because that person that they select is the one that steps forward and takes the action. They don't wait for George to do it. They do it themselves. Folks, it's time for us tonight to quit pushing this can down the road, quit waiting for George to do it, take the action, and if the people truly don't like the action that we take, then we have a referendum to be able to change it back. I would highly support that we move forward, and I'll step offline a little bit here, Mayor, but I hope that we can do the same thing for both the mayor and the council so that we can align these and get past that Weifenbach effect. Thank you.
Okay, and we have a substitute motion on the floor to approve first reading with a 3-year term for mayor starting in 2013. We'll go to John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I found some of Mr. Davis's comments kind of interesting because I know voting against this, I'm doing what my ward wants me to do. There's definitely a lot of diversity in Rapid City between wards. The overwhelming amount of people I've talked to in Ward 4 want this to go to a vote. They don't want us doing it. They feel like it's a grab for power within the city council. And, you know, I mean, everybody has to have their opinion. My opinion is, if the people want it, the people should put it on the ballot. The people should vote for it. If the people had wanted this 10 years ago, they'd put it on the ballot. A lot of the people that I've talked to like 2-year terms. They like the fact that if somebody is not doing a good job, they can vote somebody else in. If we have such a difficulty getting to learn our jobs and to do our jobs, it's your responsibility to vote us out. If we're not being effective on this council or as a mayor, you can vote us out. But I do kind of take that as an insult that we're kicking the can down the road when I'm doing what my constituents want me to do. So anyway, I will be voting no for this. So thank you very much.
Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. I jokingly call the question because, as Alderman Davis has stated, we have discussed this repeatedly. I'll be brief. I'm not going to name call the other opposing opinion and idea on this, but I will say this. This is a long-standing debate. This is a debate that you can even find in the foundation of this country in talking about who should take action, especially when selecting their form of government. I personally have my personal feelings. It's a long, old Latin saying of quis codos, quid codos, which means who's watching the watchers. It's a very simple concept, but, for example, in our system of government, our judges don't write the rules at which they judge. Congress members, so forth and so on. It's a checks and balance system. Obviously, in this instance, at a local form of government, I believe that we're your government, you've selected us, and at the same rate, you structure the rules at which you want us to be governed by. Even though these rules would not directly affect us, acting in my office as this position, the title itself and taking that action, that's where I find the problem, and I almost find it to be a conflict of interest from an ethical standpoint. For example, if the President of the United States, to make another analogy here, were to take an action that did not affect him, and even if he was in his second term, him by the, from his office taking that action for rules of governance, I would have an issue with that. So that's really where I stand. I do think it's a well thought out debate, and I welcome the debate, but that is my position.
Ron Sasso.
I must say this has been an interesting and fun debate and discussion. And one of the things with, for instance, the further we looked into this, the question that came up in Ward 5 was whether or not the council could vote to extend the mayor's length of future mayor term. And that was the one question that in Ward 5 we had pretty much unanimous agreement that we could support something of this regard. One thing, though, and I will be supporting this amended motion because of that. I don't feel that there's the same level of conflict of interest as there is for council voting to extend future terms for council. At the same time, when I say that this is for what our ward came up with, I also know there's a reason that our wards are divided the way they are, and Ward 3 is very different from Ward 4. Ward 4 is different from Ward 5 and Ward 1 and Ward 2, and that's something that we learned from the town hall meetings. There's a lot of diversity in that, but whatever happens, happens, and I think all of us are here to represent the people, and this is something as I said, I will support based on what I heard from residents of Ward 5. Thank you.
Charity Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question, then I have some following comments, if I may. And the question, I believe, would be for Joel. I'm curious, if this ordinance, as it's written right now, which is 4 and 4, does change to 3 and 3, and then also accounts for potential conflict. I know President Davis was talking about getting the mayoral election off of the council elections, so not being able to intuit the next ordinance and how that vote's going to go. But assuming that this would account for all of those potential glitches and overlap, would this then go to first reading again through Legal and Finance, or would it go to second reading with the changes?
Joel?
Generally, you can make changes between first and second reading, so it's really to give our office direction. If you want specific changes, then we can make those, and it could go to the next meeting as second reading. If you change the title of the ordinance, then I would probably say it needs to be read again. But if the title of the ordinance remains the same and you're just making changes to the text, of the ordinance, then it could still go to second reading.
Okay. So I guess this debate has come a long way. It's come a long way, and it's been killed, and it's come a long more way, and it's been killed again. On its surface, I'm not real thrilled about extending term lengths. All I have to go on is my 6 months of experience to see if the conjecture that everyone has as to the benefits of this are warranted, would actually happen in the execution of this. 6 months isn't enough time to convince me. Someone reminded me, however, that politics is the art of compromise. In light of the fact that many of us have certain projects that we're working on, that 2 years may not be enough time to carry it, and I already hear people saying, let's move this, or let's not deal with this until the next council is seated, because we have some of us already gearing up for elections. So let's hold off on X, Y, and Z, because the next council is going to be seated here in a few months, and then we'll just deal with it then. Well, then by then you have a good 6 months in office, and then that next chunk is saying, nope, campaign season's coming, we're going to push it off again. So for the sake of compromise, just to see what this ordinance could look like, knowing that second reading we still retain the obligation or right to kill it if we feel so moved, I will go ahead and support vetting this and seeing what it looks like. Thank you.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick comments to address some points that have been addressed here already. When the previous discussions involved with this topic had to do with having the people bring forward it as a petition, I've asked the people to bring this forward in some kind of a petition format, and we could work out the details within that. I've only had one person make that suggestion that they would be willing to do that. The other folks that I've asked, and I've asked a number of people, and I'm going to say round numbers, at least a couple hundred people I've asked to see if they would be interested in circulating a petition on this. And so far, no, they're not interested in doing the work that's behind this, not because of the ordinance or the changes to the ordinance, because they don't have I'm going to say the wherewithal, the time and energy that needs to be put into the circulation of a petition. So the movement or the momentum there from the public side is just not there to have the time to spend in circulating a petition. Alderman Davis talks about the Weifenbach effect. I'm trying to recall, it seems like in the past we've had this same type of effect with other council members that had to do the all-in or out effect from previous mayoral candidacies. But it has happened before, and I wish I could recall who those mayoral candidates were at that time, but it has happened before. And so this would help alleviate some of the concerns in the what we are now calling the Weifenbach effect. So just a couple of little points of interest. Thank you, Mayor. I'll yield the floor.
Thank you, Richie. Since you bring that up, Dr. Grace Michelson is someone else that I can think of. What did Jerry Wright?
I love to talk about constitutional law. I'm an engineer, not a lawyer, but I do know a little history. And I think to say that what we're doing is contrary to our founding fathers' intent is a gross error. Because if I remember my history correct, and if there's anyone in the audience that finds me in error or on the dais, please correct me. But the Declaration of Independence was formed, written, and signed by delegates, the representatives of the people. The Constitution of the United States and all of its amendments was drafted and approved and amended by delegates of the people. Same is true about the election of our Senate originally was by the state legislatures. We had the Electoral College, and on and on and on. We also have a state legislature that passes laws, sometimes innumerably listed for our benefit, and they're delegated people. We trust them, we honor them. Same with our council, county commission, and so forth. I think that we are doing what is proper, what we are authorized to do, and certainly the people have the right, if they find fault with us, as Dave said, run us out, vote us out, or they can refer it. But I think we have all the obligation to do this as we see fit and as we vote, and certainly are we within the constitutional framework of our country. Thank you.
Gary Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I started this discussion way back when I had hair. It wasn't long ago. Charity Doyle was right. The reason I got the idea to extend the limit terms, my first few months on the council, that's the first thing I heard from two council members that had been on here, one for going on the 6th year, one for 4. You know, we got an election coming up. We better slow down. We better kind of wait. This little thing called Jackson Springs water treatment plant that's going to give us 50% oil water supply, we better hold back because we're going to have some new people on there. I thought, how silly. We're supposed to be mature adults, and we're going to wait for somebody else. We're elected to make decisions. That's when I decided that we need to look at extending terms, extending the length of terms. When I took the idea to the 9 members of the council, because Alderman Laurenti had not joined us yet, I did not get one dissenting opinion. Everybody said, yeah, we probably ought to look at that. Now, there's a little difference between do it by ordinance the way I wanted to do it or do it by initiated measure. But everybody said, yes, we ought to look at this. Because really there's 2 factors. One, get a study, plan, and people that will be there long enough to make sure that changes that Mr. Ski was talking about and that we got the constant plan with staff and with the council to get the ideas continually on. And the other little part is we got to learn to work together. It takes a while to build some trust up here. It takes a while to get credibility, no matter how good we think we are. And so I will be supporting the 3 years for the mayor, and I'll be supporting 3 years for council if that comes up. And by the way, that's not self-serving. I'm not running for re-election either. So we'll be supporting it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Gary, and we'll go to Steve Laurenti.
I just wanted to be brief on my comments, and I wanted to correct something that's been being said by quite a few members of the council. But for me, it's very simple. And this isn't about the forums, because I think the forums were just a way to extend this item because they didn't have the votes at the time. And if you remember back, and most of you probably don't, but the fact of the matter is they didn't have the votes to support extending the terms. And so there was a change to do the forums, purely to extend this. At a minimum, this is self-serving, at a minimum. I've heard it said that, well, it only affects the people who are going to get reelected. Well, the first question I have, ladies and gentlemen, is who has the advantage in an election? The people running against the person who's already in office or the person in office? There's no doubt about that. We all know that. The incumbent has a distinct advantage. So right there, there's the self-serving part of it, and at a minimum it's that. The fundamental part of our government is that they are the ones who elect the people they want to serve and how long they want us to serve. That doesn't belong to the elected official to decide how long they should serve. I'm sorry, but that's just fundamental to our government, city, federal, state. So, and then the last thing that I want to clarify is the Ron Weifenbach effect. Because Ron was at our forum, and I believe he's in Ward 2 now, so he was there. And I will apologize. I'm going to basically paraphrase what he said, but definitively he stood against this completely. that elected officials should try to do this by ordinance. He was very clear. He didn't jump back and forth. He didn't sit on the fence. He said clearly, elections are not the problem. The fact that the people have a voice every 2 years is not the problem. It's the people that get elected sometimes who have an agenda and sometimes aren't exactly forthright about their agenda during the election. And so every 2 years, the people have the ability, at least at this point, to decide whether those elected officials are performing and doing their job. And for us to change those terms is to take voice away from those people, pure and simple. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This government works extremely well and has for over 100 years in this city because of the tremendous staff that are full-time employees and part-time employees, if there are, I'm sure there is. It's because of those people. That's where the continuity of our government is. Elected officials are brought forward for policy, and the people are the ones who decide ultimately whether the things they want done policy-wise are being brought forward and done. And when we extend the terms, we take voice away from the people. There isn't anything that is different about that. When we extend our own terms, it's self-serving, and we take voice and power away from the people. I yield the floor. Thank you.
We'll go to Charity Doyle.
Thank you. I think second reading perhaps might be the place to get on our soapboxes about certain things. I remember sitting in that audience when the chicken coop stuff was up here, and I was very thankful that I wasn't up here at that point. Not really sure how I feel about chicken coops, but I did remember hearing the discouragement in people that were sitting around me that it was killed at first reading. There are some people that this is very, very important to. I can't say that I agree with them, but I think that to do our due diligence, reword the language, see what happens between first and second reading. We still have the opportunity to kill this if that is in fact what we as a council need to do. But to kill it at first reading, it reminds me of the chicken coops. And I just don't think it was fair because there were questions that those people had, questions that the council couldn't answer at the time. And without vetting that information, they killed it. So they never had the opportunity to honor what these people were bringing forward. And I think we need to at least explore it to its fullest. We still have a stop or a fail safe if we need it. And I know that I'd like a couple more weeks to think about this, and I think that would give us that opportunity.
We'll go to Richie Nordstrom. Richie?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to clarify a couple of points, or at least one point that Alderman Laurenti brought up at that ward meeting. We also had a previous council member, Patty Martinson, that was there for that meeting, and she supported the idea or the concept of at least allowing us to take a look at this and moving it forward. So, yes, it is true that Weifenbach was loudly and very, very forceful about not letting this go forward, but Patty Martinson, also a council member, was very supportive of the concept to allow this to go forward. And there's a lot of other things that I disagree with that were made mention of here too, but at least that particular point I wanted to make sure was abundantly clear that other council members do support the concept. Thank you, Mayor. I'll yield the floor.
Ron Sasso.
Call the question.
Question has been called. Is there any objections to calling the question? Okay. There are no objections to calling the question. I will restate the motion so everyone understands it. The motion is to approve first reading of ordinance number 5767, which is item 80, to modify the length of term for mayor to be 3 years, starting with the elections in 2013. Everyone understands the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Mason. Doyle. Sasso. Davis. Peterson. Roberts. Brown. Wright. Lorente. Nordstrom. Motion carries.
I wasn't sure how Jerry voted, Jerry. Right. Motion carries. We now go to item 81. Jordan Mason.
Hey, Mayor. Item 81 is first reading ordinance number 768, an ordinance to establish the qualifications and term of office for aldermen by adding section 2.08.005 to the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I'll yield the floor.
May I have the floor to make a motion?
Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we amend the ordinance to approve it to 3 years for the council member, and starting with the next election. And I made my comments earlier as to why I think a 3-year term is important, and I will stand by those and answer any questions. Not changing anything.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion by Wright and a second by Brown. Jerry, you still have the floor. Do you need the floor?
I yield the floor for discussion.
We'll go to Bonnie Peterson.
I'm going to support this measure because it's an incremental lengthening. When we had our town meetings on this issue, the people, the majority of the people felt the term should be longer. The debate was in how to do it. Based on the fact that the majority of them thought it should be done, I'm going to go ahead and do this, not because of the Weifenbach effect or because it's more convenient for the mayor or the council. I'm doing it because I believe that for the continuity, for what goes on and how things just stop progressing, issues are set aside, that's not in the best interest of the city, because we could be a much more dynamic place if we had more continuity. I believe strongly that's in the best interest of the citizens, so I will support that. Thank you.
We'll go to Joel Andine, our city attorney. Joel?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just ask, based on some comments that were made on the previous item, if you want to stagger the terms so that the mayor is not running at the same time as council members. That will probably take some finagling on the language, and some people might not get a full 3-year term, and we'll have to look at that. But if you could just perhaps modify the motion if that's what you want to accomplish, so that we could come forward with proposals to stagger the terms so that the mayor and the council would not be up for election on the same election, then we could do that and figure out a way to make that happen.
I've got it, Jerry.
That's okay with the motion maker and the seconder?
You need to outline it, though.
And we'll go to Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to offer a friendly amendment that would take those 3-year terms out in this fashion. This following spring in 2012, those council people that are concerned, they would simply be a 2-year term in 2012. We've already voted that the mayor's term will go to 3-year in 2013, and then the successive elections after that, half the council will come up for election in 2014. They would be a 3-year term. The other half of the council will come up in 2015. They will be a 3-year term, and it will go in that form from that point on. The mayor first year, half the council the second year, the other half the council the third. So it would remain that this coming election would be 2-year. After that, everybody would go, and we would avoid that overlap, and it may actually qualm some of the fears that some of the council people have that they're voting themselves a 3-year term, because it will buy them one more election this summer. That would be my friendly amendment, if that's acceptable.
Okay, that's been accepted. Everyone understands the friendly amendment. It's been accepted by the motion maker and the seconder. Any further discussions? Seeing none, everyone understands the motion. We'll proceed to a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Roll call, please.
Doyle? I'm sorry. Doyle? Thank you. Sasso? Davis? Peterson? Roberts? Brown? Wright? Lorente? Nordstrom? Mason? Still carries 6-4.
Item 82. Jordan?
Mayor? Item 82 is first reading ordinance number 793, an ordinance to regulate streets, sidewalks, and public places by repealing Title 12 of the Rapid Municipal Code and replacing it with a new Title 12 of the Rapid Municipal Code, and I move to approve.
Second.
A motion by Mason and a second by Doyle to approve item 82, first reading. Ron Sasso?
I just wanted to thank city staff and the attorney's office for putting this together. This is a very positive change for our roads moving forward, and just wanted to say thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'd also like to say thank you to you for your work on this as well. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 83. Jordan?
Item 83 is first reading ordinance number 5794, an ordinance to regulate public utilities and services within the city of Rapid City by repealing Title 13 of the Rapid City Municipal Code and adding a new Title 13 to the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Doyle and a second by Roberts to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 84.
Item 84 is first reading ordinance number 5795, an ordinance regulating travel parks by repealing Chapter 12.44 of the Rapid City Municipal Code and adopting a new Chapter 15.52 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move to approve.
Motion by Mason and a second by Peterson to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 85.
Item 85 is first reading ordinance number 5798, and this is to rezone from low-density residential district to office commercial district, and this at the intersection of Catherine Boulevard and Sheridan Lake Road, and I move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mason and a second by Peterson to approve. We'll go to John Roberts.
I just wanted to let the council know that I have got a lot of emails about this specifically because it never went through the Planning Commission first. It came to the council first. And if somebody would like to make a friendly amendment, I would like to see it go back to the Planning Commission first so they could discuss it a little bit. I don't personally see anything really that wrong with it, but I have had a tremendous amount of emails from people that are against it, and I think they should have a right to speak on it.
A motion to take this back to committee would be a substitute motion, not an amendment, so we can come back to you later. We'll go to Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start by saying that I have more than a representative interest in this item. Not only will our decision tonight impact hundreds of my constituents, but quite frankly, when I sit down in the morning for a cup of coffee, I look directly down on this property and at this intersection. So it's right down the hill from me. I know it intimately. I drive past the property almost every time I leave my home. I look at it from a standpoint that it's adjacent to other commercially zoned property. There's no safety factor. The rezoning will not change the traffic patterns or create any safety concerns that aren't already there. The location of this property, based on the current traffic on Sheridan Lake Road, is extremely undesirable as a residence. The house is 15 feet from the sidewalk. As a landlord, I can understand what these guys are going through. It's tough to get people to rent a house that sits on a high traffic street like this. The plan shown tonight, if you know this property, it's not unattractive by any means, but the plans shown tonight are extremely attractive. In fact, thank you. You're sitting behind it there. It will be an enhancement to the neighborhood, in my opinion, and probably, I mean, it's all speculative when you start talking about property values in this economy that we're in, but most likely will be an enhancement to the property values in the neighborhood. So like Alderman Roberts, I too have had lots of phone calls and emails. The vast majority of them, other than a few of the folks that live in the vicinity that are just, quite frankly, don't want a commercial structure next to them, and next is within the mile up the hill and around the loop. I have a hard time looking at this to see it as anything other than the appropriate zoning for this location, that we change it to office commercial and allow that intersection to fully be utilized that way, and what a beautiful structure. So I'm going to definitely support the first reading of rezoning this location. Thank you.
Ron Sasso.
I also have some concerns. I have heard from some residents with concerns regarding this property and the change in zoning. I would definitely support having it go to the Planning Commission. The argument of this property being near a corner and not that far from a busy street, there are other houses in Rapid City that fall under that category that remain as residential units without turning into commercial. My concern, again, is the residents in that area, and I just want to make sure that their voices are heard, and then looking at, once we have both sides, that then we can make a good decision on this. So thank you.
Charity Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is that the Sunbees did meet with many of the residents in that area. Is that correct? Where did I get that?
That is correct. We did have a meeting, and we mailed out, I think, around 75 letters to everybody in the neighborhood. All of the Wildwood people, and this, again, is not Wildwood. This is Unadell Acres, so we included Unadell and Wildwood. And we had maybe 10 people show up at a round table discussion, and we felt like we made a lot of progress, and that included the two adjacent neighbors to the property right on the west. So a lot of things were discussed. The privacy fence, we said we would do things to help her out with the fence, trees, that type of thing.
Okay. Thank you for answering that, Bobby. Would the question be directed to Brett, Mr. Mayor, about why this hasn't gone through the Planning Commission? Yeah. Brett, would you mind?
Yeah, it has been tradition here to take first reading prior to Planning Commission because it speeds up the process, and that's why it's going to you here tonight. Planning Commission is this Thursday, 7 a.m. here in these chambers. And
as the growth management or community development and planning, did I get that right? We're still working on that. Do you have a challenge with going through this venue as opposed to going back through the Planning Commission?
I think it's entirely up to you which way you want to proceed. Certainly we can proceed along to Planning Commission this week and see what concerns we have. You also have another crack at it coming up, so it's entirely up to you which way you want to go.
So really we do have the time then, first reading, between first reading and second reading?
Yes, you do.
Okay. So is it necessary to continue it?
I don't believe so, but then again, it's not my decision, it's your decision.
Thank you.
We'll go to Bonnie Peterson.
Yes, we frequently get items before they go to the Planning Commission, and which sometimes frustrates me because before that, items aren't linked, to the computer. So I think they're going to go to the Planning Commission on Thursday. We have plenty of opportunity when it comes back for second reading. If the Planning Commission didn't like it, then we can go from there. But I don't see any reason to hold it up tonight because they're going to the Planning Commission on Thursday. And this is frequently like I said, over the time I've been here, this is not really unusual for it to come to us before the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Most of my questions have been answered, so if I may ask another question of Mr. Sunby, is it Bobby Sunby? May I ask a question of Mr. Sunby? Please, Mr. Sunby? Just a clarification, you mentioned something about the cost being picked up by your firm or your business. Then if I heard the comment correctly, it had to do with a privacy fence. Could you address that one more time for me?
Her concerns revolved mostly around that, a privacy fence. I think she liked the ideas. At some point, you'll hear from her. The privacy fence, we also discussed some trees. Those were really the only two concerns, along with the parking. We discussed 3 different parking plans, and the one that we solidified and enhanced there was the one that was her favorite of the 3. So those are the 3 concerns.
One more question for Mr. Sunby, if I may, Mayor. The rendering that we're looking at, that's looking from, I'm going to call it the southwest, looking northeast. Is that correct? Looking from the front of your building, meaning from Wildwood, I believe the
That's
street's
exactly
Wildwood?
right. That's right.
Yes. So we're looking to a sunrise.
Yeah, that doesn't quite make sense, but I mean, yeah, they
Thank
didn't
you.
have anything to do with the way they put the clouds in there.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That cleared up a whole bunch of things for me. Thank you. I'll yield the floor.
We'll go to John Roberts.
The reason I brought this up is because it caught me off guard. From what I see of this, I think it's probably the best use for that property there. Your building looks beautiful. My concern is all the emails that I got, and also a couple of commissioners that called me wanting to know, what is this, what's going on, why am I getting a barrage of emails on something that's not even on our agenda or hasn't been on our agenda, and that's why I brought it up. But I do know it's coming Thursday onto the Planning Commission anyway, and we'll go from there. I just wanted to make sure that the people that had concerns still could voice their concerns, and they still have a right as far as if they want to contest what the Planning Commission does or what we do here if we approve the first reading, or do they lose that right? No?
The right is
Okay.
preserved.
Okay. That's one thing that I was concerned about, too, because I had a couple questions about that. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. We do not have any further lights. The motion is on the floor to approve first reading of item 85. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries with 1 no from Ron Sasso. Item 86.
Item 86 is a request by Centerline for Flump and Lump LLC for a preliminary plat, and this is located north of the intersection of Founders Park Drive and Philadelphia Street. And I believe I move to approve with stipulations.
Motion by Mason, second by Wright to approve with stipulations. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And if there's no objections, I'd like to call for a very brief recess. We'll come back at 10 till. That's about 7 minutes. Are there any objections to going into recess? Okay, we're in recess. Thank you, everyone. We are reconvened. We will move on to item 87. Jordan, can you please read it into the record, please?
Authorize staff to advertise for bids to provide for the city fireworks show for 2012 in an amount not to exceed $30,000, and I move to approve.
Motion by Mason, second by Peterson to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries with 1 no. From Alderman Laurenti. Item 88, Jordan.
Item 88 is a request by Kent Hagg for Alta Terra Development LLC to consider an application for a project plan for tax increment district number 70, and that is located at Catron Boulevard from 5th Street to South U.S. Highway 16, and then south along U.S. Highway 16 to Samus Trail, and east to the proposed Highland Crossing subdivision, and I yield the floor.
Okay. Jerry Wright.
I'll make a motion to approve, but I have some comments later.
Second.
We have a motion by Wright and a second by Davis to approve. Jerry, you still have the floor.
I support this, but I would like for future tips that we do this and that we don't do urban sprawl. Let's try to keep our growth in a reasonable pattern where we're closer to the city and not going all over the place. Thank you.
Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. First, let me apologize for mispronouncing Mr. Haig's name again incorrectly. I do apologize, and for some odd reason I have trouble with that. I also wanted to say I've been reconsidering this a lot, and my main issue has been the infill issue, as Mr. Wright has stated, is the idea of putting TIFs on the outer perimeter and having a gap in our development. That's something I'm concerned about. But after reconsidering and looking at the issue in depth, I do believe this is something I can support, but I would also like to just state publicly that I think it is also the city's responsibility to provide the infrastructure to also allow that infill or in the gap of that area to be developed properly. I think Mr. Haig has also provided a fair argument to say that as a developer and somebody that wants to do business in the city, he does have a right to utility hookups. I think that's a fair expectation. But again, I guess I would say that I do believe that it is the city's responsibility to provide the infrastructure out to that area and fill in the gap. With that, I'll yield the floor.
Thank you, Jordan. We'll go to John Roberts. John.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Haig is not that hard to say. I do have to agree with Mr. Mason, and it is the city's responsibility to have the infrastructure to these areas, and I wish we could have taken care of it in a different way. I wish we'd have had it there for you beforehand. This TIF being set up already and seeing that this is just the plan to get this moving forward, I hate to say this, but I am going to vote for this because I'm not a big TIF fan, but we do need to get the infrastructure. We do need to get the growth going that way because that seems to be the most logical way right at this moment to get our growth going in the city. And the plan itself looks great. So hopefully, this will just be another way to add more tax dollars in the future into our coffers. And I am hoping that in the future we will have ways to make these TIFs a little more affordable to the taxpayer. So anyway, it looks good. Let's get it going. Let's get it done. And you have my support. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We'll go to Charity Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to kind of summarize this one up in a nutshell. It's interesting. It's a very interesting project that is coming through for this tax increment district simply because these developers are willing to take all of the risk for infrastructure that we're obligated to provide. So I question their sanity on multiple occasions. But here, the thing that I want everybody to understand is that if the infill that they are hoping for does not happen, they get to pay for that infrastructure. We don't. And I think that's something significant to make note of. They obviously have the confidence in what they're putting out there. that the infill is going to be attracted, and if it doesn't happen, it's not on our backs. So just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Ron Sasso.
Thank you, Mayor. And I know this is something that, watching the video of the Legal and Finance, one of the questions that I had was 0.16 utility funds, and is this something where I think based on the amount of funds that are available that it would not be an option, or because there already was the tax increment financing tax increment district in place? Is that why that wasn't explored more? Yes, question for city staff.
To be honest with you, I don't know the history behind what portions were picked up from the city and which portions were going to be picked up by the developer. I do know that somewhere along the line, the city made the choice to extend sewer along Catron Boulevard, which we're currently installing right now. So we have picked up a portion of some of the infrastructure improvements through this TIF district right now. But I'm not sure, I guess, the reasoning behind what portions we did and what portions the developer's doing.
Thank you.
On the floor.
I'll yield.
Okay. Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to be also supporting this project. It looks like a very ambitious project, and I see Mr. Kostanowski out in the audience, and I remember him something, I believe it was Larry that made this comment years ago to address a concern that was raised from the dais here about spot development. I'll give you the credit, Larry, that you made this comment years ago about not worrying about no, wasn't you? Wasn't you? Anyway, years ago, there was... The concern had to do with spot development. So to answer the question on the dais, this issue, and whether Ski brought it up years ago or not, I don't... But anyway, I'll give you the credit. So so it's an issue that needs to be addressed, but if we can refrain from doing it here on this one, I would urge that, and we, if it needs to, we certainly can bring it up at a different conversation. So again, I'm supporting of this, and hopefully, Larry, your memory will be okay. Thank you.
I think it's a little selective.
We'll go to Gary Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the reasons that I supported it through the TIF committee, and I think was going to answer the question about this infill and that too, is that at the people that were coming up and supporting this project, one of them was a member of the hospital, the doctors that are out there. That didn't happen the last time. They fought it. This time they said, we want this development, we want the road, we want the structures, because we like to do some additions in that too. So I think you're going to see that infill, and you're going to see that help bring in some more roofs, maybe eventually down the road, the third phase that they're talking about. If that happens, you still have more property tax. You've got a reason for more sales tax to be brought in. So this particular one is, to me, truly an economic development TIF, and it's one that I'm going to bet all of Jerry's marbles that it's going to work. So I'm going to be supporting it.
And we'll go to Jerry Wright.
Well, the marble I said is I'm not for urban sprawl. I support the project. And I think maybe I'm the guy that said that, and quit blaming it on Larry. But okay? But I do think we need to guard against leapfrog sprawl development, which will not contribute, will add cost to us. That's all I'm saying in this. And I think as we do our planning and TIFs, so forth, we need to do that. But I totally support this project. No question about it.
And we'll go to Gary Brown.
Call the question.
Are there any objections to calling the question? If not, we will proceed to the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries with one no from Alderman Laurenti. Okay. Item number 89. Jordan.
89 is direction to pursue alternate funding sources for portions of tax increment District Number 70 infrastructure, and I yield the floor.
Thank you. I'd like to pass the gavel quickly to Alderman Davis, and I have a comment regarding this item, since this was something that I had put on the agenda, or asked to be on the agenda for Legal and Finance. At the Legal and Finance meeting on February 1, it was mentioned that it was not necessary to ask for direction from the council, since the administration already has the ability to explore an idea. I completely agree, and that is true. In the interest of keeping the council and community informed, that is why I brought the item forward. Accordingly, the wording of this item can be changed to simply acknowledge the report. There are two unassailable reasons, in my opinion, for exploring this concept. One is significant opportunities are coming, as we heard in the forum in Belle Fourche the other night, and we need to be ready. The second reason is South Dakota Statute 9-40-1, again that's 9-40-1, requires cities to provide basic utilities, including water and sewer, within its borders, and this was annexed area. Leadership is being remiss if we don't explore every opportunity. This is not a small task, and money is not unlimited. So I have asked Brett and Terry, our Planning Director and Public Works Director, to examine the growth potential areas and determine where we can be proactive. If growth can pay back a TIF, a tax increment financing district, then growth can also pay back the costs of constructing city infrastructure and mains to serve these areas. And staff is then further directed to explore additional funding mechanisms to pay for these necessary and required improvements. The reason for bringing this forward is to share the exciting vision of adding more tools to our toolbox so we can continue to expand existing business, attract new business, and bring higher paying jobs to our community. New development funded by property tax increment financing needs police, fire, planning, and other city services which are funded by the general fund. However, since the revenues for TIFs do not come into the tax coffers until after the TIF has been paid off, this creates strain for the general fund. Pursuing exploration of this concept in conjunction with TIF 70 makes sense, since this area along Highway 16 has long been projected to be a major growth area for our city, and statutorily we are also required to provide basic services to this area. Thank you. And now we'll go to Jerry Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. I certainly have no problem whatsoever looking at it. I certainly stood on the position that I'm for long-range planning to include financial and development. But if we're going to fund our utility extensions by anything other than a TIF or grants, and if we're going to take it out of our utility funds, we better be real serious about doing some rate studies and figuring out how we're going to pay for it and what the impact is going to be to the entire system, versus where it's in a TIF, it's basically at risk to the TIF and the developers. I think it's a good thing to do. I think it could be part of our long-range budgeting and programming and our management or goals and budgeting. But I think it's an important issue to look at, yes. But I think if that's possibly the way we're going to go, council be prepared to take some action that's tough. You're going to be raising rates, water and sewer. Big time.
We'll go to Bonnie Peterson.
I'll move to acknowledge the report.
We have a motion by Peterson, a substitute motion by Peterson, a second by Nordstrom to acknowledge the report. And we'll go to Charity Doyle. Charity? It was seconded. It's a motion to acknowledge. Do you have a motion? The motion is to acknowledge the report. Okay. This is the motion. The motion is simply to acknowledge the report. Any further discussion? Richie?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, several of us from the council were up at that Bellfush meeting, and I think it's worthwhile taking your comments and seriously looking at some alternative funding on it. As you know, I have great concerns about some of the possible suggestions that were made, but I'm still very open to other ideas that can be brought forward to add to the discussion. So I'm very supportive of your concept. So let's run with it. And I approve the acknowledgement of the report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Richie, and we'll go to Ron Sasso. Ron?
I also think that it is good to explore as many options as we can, looking at .16 utility funds, typically trying to recoup that through hookup fees and the like. I think all options should be on the table moving forward realistically. I think it's just good business to keep looking at other options, so and keeping our tax dollars rolling in ideally. So thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Any further discussion? The motion is to acknowledge. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Bids, item 89A. Pauline?
Thank you, Mayor. We have just one bid before you tonight, and that is on the Jackson Boulevard Utilities Rapid Creek Bridge to Mountain View Road project. This is actually a state DOT project. They received 2 bids on this, and the recommendation is to concur with the DOT's award of the total bid amount. And the amount's actually $16,789,520.41, with the city's portion being $5,696,979.48 to Heavy Constructors, Inc.
Motion by Mason, second by Peterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll now go to 89B. And Jordan, can you read this into the record, 89B?
Authorize Finance Office to issue treasurer's check to Pennington Title Company in the amount of $95,000 for the Skyline Drive preservation property purchase, and I move to approve.
Motion by Mason, second by Davis to approve 89B. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 89C. Richie? Read 89C for us.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution 2012-020, a resolution encouraging members of the South Dakota Legislature to support the will of the people of Rapid City as expressed in the June 7th, 2011 ballot initiative. And I move for approval.
Do we have a second? We have a motion by Nordstrom and a second by Peterson. Do we have any discussion? We'll go to Jordan Mason. Jordan?
Thank you, Mayor. After reading this resolution and looking at the current legislation before the state, I realize this is not going to be the most popular thing said tonight, but I am concerned about the city getting involved in stating whether or not we approve pieces of state legislation or disapprove. I understand the idea of stating the facts and sending on. There are a number of statements in here that I do agree with. For example, stating the facts that there was a vote taken, there was an initiated ordinance that the current state legislation would affect. I have no problem with stating the facts. But starting to say and getting the city involved in the historical precedent that will move forward from here on out in saying that we approve of this piece of legislation or disapprove of that. That's an area that I guess I frankly feel a little uncomfortable with. I feel that our media sources do a great job of commentary on that. I have no problem moving forward with this resolution, eliminating specifically saying whether or not we approve of one bill or another in our state, Senate, and House. But I did want to voice my concerns in that regard. I just think it's something that we need to think about moving forward.
Any further discussion? We'll go to Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you. We send people over to Pier. The mayor's going in the morning. Pauline, are you going tomorrow? We send people to Washington, D.C., and that is to express what we like and what we don't like. I don't think this is a real big jump from that. We're saying, we're just, in the resolution, it simply says the portion of those bills that talk about local control and the portion that talks about preventing local control from any advertising technology. So specifically, really what we're doing is we're just sending a letter over there because we can't all go over there in person and tell them in person. So I don't see it as a real big stretch. Why I was shared in bringing this forward is because our citizens spoke overwhelmingly in support of the initiative. And basically the bills are trying to deny their right to have local control. And so I see this purely as standing up for our citizens here in Rapid City to say that we have the right to have our control and not to have some other bill come across to deny that right. So anyway, I'll be voting to support this because I think it's incumbent on us, whether you would have voted for it or against it, I think it's still incumbent upon us to stand up and for the people of Rapid City. Thank you.
Jerry Wright.
I don't believe this is the first time the City Council has passed a resolution to oppose or support legislation in Pier, is it?
I could answer that. Jerry, I know that there have been other resolutions that the council's passed regarding legislation. In fact, it was either in 2003 or 2004, we registered 2 department heads as lobbyists and sent them to Pier for a good portion of the session to lobby regarding the airport legislation. So the precedent has been set. We've gone much further than simply passing a resolution.
Thank you.
Go to Ron Sasso.
I will be supporting this resolution, and I think when we look at this, again, it's a resolution, not an ordinance. It is, we've already had the vote from citizens of Rapid City, and I think it is in our best interest as elected officials to further support any legislation that will support that position. Thank you.
Steve Laurenti.
I just wanted to speak in support of it. Everybody, well, not everybody, but the fact of the matter is the best government is government that's closest to the people. And this is our city. The people have spoken on this issue, and we need to support that vote. And again, it's the people of Rapid City that spoke resoundingly for this, so I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to draw attention to Senate Bill, Senate Bill 157. It has to do with 4 key words that have been added into this local authority to have control, prohibit control of any advertising technology. I think that's the biggest red flag we can have in this whole bill. It essentially it doesn't allow us or give us, in other words, it takes away all of our ordinance control over this. So that's the biggest concern that I have on Senate Bill 157. Thank you, Mayor. I'll yield the floor.
Gary Brown.
Call the question.
Are there any objections to calling the question? Okay. Can we have a second to the motion to call the question, please? We have an objection. Okay, we have a motion by Brown and a second by Wright. We're going to proceed with immediately to the vote on calling the question. A yes is to stop debate. A no is to continue debate. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay. Motion carries with 1 no. We will now proceed directly to the vote on the resolution. We have a motion to approve. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay. Motion carries with 1 no from Charity Doyle. Okay. We'll now go to item 89D, and this is Journey Museum report from Richie Nordstrom. Richie?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to give a brief Journey Museum report. Primarily what I wanted to do here as well is to thank the mayor for having the staff put a Journey Museum link to the front page of the city webpage. So that option to have that as a link to the city webpage, I really can't say enough, Mayor. Thank you very much for doing that. And then also the staff of the Journey Museum has supported this comment as well from the having that link available so more people can have access to it. Just a quick one-liner on the staff that's working over there at the Journey Museum is that they came up with a subcommittee that is working on marketing. And Alderman Sasso came over to that committee and gave us a very good suggestion, and we're going to try to pursue with that suggestion. And there's some other comments that are coming out of that committee that hopefully will be able to help the Journey Museum be a little better recognized throughout the World Wide Web. So thank you, everybody, for all your hard work on this project, and we'll try to keep it going. Thank you, Mayor. Again, appreciate your help on this.
We have a motion to acknowledge. Do we have a second? Second. And a second by Mason. And I'd like to thank Richie for his passion for the Journey as well, and for being a great liaison to the Journey Museum Board. So thank you, Richie. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 90. Jordan, can you read this into the record for us?
Sure. Jeffrey Patterson, appeal of denial of application for private security license, and I will yield the floor.
Mr. Patterson in the audience tonight. We have a motion. We have a motion by Mason and a second by Roberts to uphold the denial. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on public hearing items 91 through 106. Do we have a motion to open public hearing? So moved. Second. Motion by Davis, second by Roberts. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will go to Talbot White Zurich, item 104.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Talbot White Zurich. I'm with the law firm of Gunderson Palmer, just down the street as of November 11th, in the Old Elks building. I'm today appearing on behalf of Hughes Network. Hughes Network is looking at locating a satellite antenna, basically, I always call them satellite dishes, up off of Tower Road. Now, this came out of planning on a 10-0 with certain conditions. We don't have any issues with the conditions. It was appealed from there by Ms. Cook. Her primary concern was she lives north of the project. What Golden West, working in conjunction with, Hughes is working in conjunction with Golden West, went out, did a balloon trial showing where they had put some trees and what kind of shielding that would provide. Based on that balloon trial, we've provided you some locations and sites as the trees will appear when planted. Now, there's been 2 landscapes. You were given, there was one sent out Wednesday, then a modified one sent out on Friday. There, when we looked at the first one, we thought, you can move these trees around a little bit and maybe put an extra one in there, so we added one tree to give a little bit better shielding. These trees then show that site shows as the trees are planted and planted on 2-year growth, they're going to go in about 10 feet, and then the second site shows it at about 12 feet. Now, this site is right next to an existing Golden West site. To the south of where this dish will be is a 180-foot lattice tower, and you can see that in the pictures that we've provided. That's in the same line of sight that Ms. Cook has, along with multiple other towers in that area. To help with the screening, we've added the trees. Also, at the planning, there was a question on the Tower Road view. What the landscape calls for is 12 cedar trees or juniper trees along Tower Road to provide some screening there. And if you look at how that screening's been added, Golden West, when they did the landscaping, is including screening trees in front of the existing chain link fence already around their building. So it isn't just to this improvement, because as this improvement is just a bump out in the existing chain link fence, the actual access is going to come through the existing chain link fence from the Golden West side, so you'll come in on the existing approach and then go back to the site. And that way you'll have the existing trees without the need for any kind of approach put in place. As mentioned, there's other towers in the area. Once the dish is in place, from the ground to about the top would be about 28 feet, about the height of a two-story house. There was a mention of potentially some other type of screening, but with the chain link fence to allow security and for the snow to blow through, that's really the ultimate in design. And with it being just a bump out of existing chain link fence, we believe it's appropriate in that area, given the existing structures already. Thank you. The one comment I'd make, I have representatives here from Golden West and from Hughes Network that can probably answer more technical questions.
Thank you. And we'll go to Jay Culbertson. Jay?
Good evening. Jay Culbertson. My wife, Alicia, and I own the Big Sky Lodge, 4080 Tower Road. And we've been out of town a lot for some commitments we had, and it just came to my attention a couple of days ago that this project was going through. So some of the logic eludes me. I've heard just tonight about Skyline Drive Preservation Project, the sign blight around town. Being in the hospitality business, I realize how important Skyline Drive is, Dinosaur Park, etc., views that are unbelievable. The logic that there's already towers, I guess that means the view's already obstructed, but adding more eyesores, such as a 18-foot diameter antenna that's 28 feet tall, certainly doesn't help with our image. It can be seen from all over the city. Trying to cover up a 28-foot tall tower with 10-foot trees, I'm sorry, it's not going to work. There's water towers, there's radio towers. They already exist. Actually, as a community, we get use of, I'm not sure about the radio towers, I'm sure a portion of those, we get use out of the water towers. We get water from them. HughesNet is a huge corporation that serves rural America with internet access from satellite. So they want to transmit to the satellite from the center of Rapid City and then broadcast to rural America. It seems to me that the beneficiaries of rural America should have the facility in rural America, not in the city limits of Rapid City. They were offered a place in Wall, where Golden West has their headquarters. It didn't qualify for whatever reason, although they're only building 15 of these things to service all of Western America, my understanding from Mississippi West. Why it has to be in Rapid City, it doesn't follow with me. So HughesNet will benefit. Golden West might benefit with getting some rent. The city of Rapid City is not going to benefit. We have internet available through means other than satellite, as do all cities. I don't think we get much of a tax benefit from a satellite dish. Most satellite dishes, one appears, the next thing you know, there's a cluster of them. Once you give a variance to allow such a facility, I think it's opening the floodgate because a precedent has been set. And even Golden West representative told me they could not say there wouldn't be more in the future. Rapid City won't get the use of the dish because nobody needs HughesNet in town. Originally, I thought I would ask for it to be continued a month. After sitting around tonight and listening, I realize this is a second reading, so I think I need to ask that it be denied. At minimum, it should be delayed and restudied so that HughesNet can find a place outside the city limits to locate their facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Also on item 104 is James Muir, Hughes Network Systems.
Mayor, council members, good evening. Hughes Network Systems is an EchoStar company headquartered in Germantown, Maryland. For the record, I work at 11717 Exploration Lane in Germantown at the headquarters building. The Rapid City is one of 15 gateways across the United States. Those gateways are located west of the Mississippi due to satellites like to be in rain-free areas. So during the design of the spacecraft, certain cities were specified in the design. So Rapid City was one of those cities, along with 14 others: Boise, Idaho, Billings, Montana, Salt Lake City, Missoula, Montana, Flagstaff, Rapid City, Tucson, El Paso, Odessa, Texas, Amarillo, Del Rio, Texas, Albuquerque, New Mexico, North Platte, Nebraska, and Grand Junction, Colorado. The Jupiter satellite that will launch in 2012 will support approximately 100,000 users out of the Rapid City location. Now, for some reasons on site selection, the site has met technical limitation, clear look angles. There's also a requirement that the dish be within 300 feet of the indoor equipment. In addition, the site allowed for the installation and screening without compromising look angles. The location provided the ability to construct, install without the risk of interference with existing facilities and utilities. It allows to integrate the new antenna fencing into the existing site. It has the fiber capacity needed to operate the system. It was situated in an area that had existing communications infrastructure already in place. Specific, the Golden West location provided us with mission-critical infrastructure, meaning that it has UPS and generator support. So if we lose power during that time, our users would not be affected. In addition, we look for a quality operator. In that, we found Golden West. So we would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'd like to recognize Dr. Daniel Tackett. Dr. Tackett.
Mayor, council members, I appreciate this very much. When I first came in, I was wondering where the coffee pot was, and I think I understand why you don't have one. But anyway, go on and on. And I don't have a PowerPoint, but I do have some images I'd like to show you. I'm a resident of the area in question. I live on the very southernmost tip of Skyline Drive. Oh, it's up. Let's see. This is the proposed area of the dish. It would sit approximately right here. This is my driveway. This is my house. The house right here, house here, house here. There will be one here in the near future. This is a residential lot. And then this is a home here, and there are two homes right down here. And then there will be more homes and potentially office complexes going off in this direction. And if you look right here, this is across Highway 16, but fairly dense residential development there. The proposed dish is less than 250 feet from my house, and that's why I was notified. But apparently, because of that constraint, there were a bunch of neighbors that weren't notified, and I think that's why you probably don't see more people here tonight fighting this. At any rate, the current zoning for that area is Park Forest, and the company wants a variance. They want it, the normal setback is 35 feet from Tower Road. They want to truncate that to 27 feet. So this will be, if this were to go through, it would be even closer to the road than normal zoning would allow. As they said, this is, I think it's 28.5-foot tall structure, which probably is close to the top of that bar. And the diameter of the dish is probably close to the size of that screen. With a 27-foot setback, I'm probably standing pretty close to where the dish would be, if not slightly closer than the dish would be from the road. And there would be a barbed wire fence, a 6-foot barbed wire fence above your heads, right about the level of that screen. Well, not barbed wire, but chain link fence with barbed wire on top going across there, and then a few 10-foot trees going across there to shield your view of that structure. This area, years ago,
Dr. Tapp,
was in, yes?
If you could wind down your comments.
Oh, okay. Wind it down? All right. Okay. Years ago, this area was utilized for radio towers. You can see some of those in the picture. But in the last 20 years, this has become more and more residential. In this general area, there are 36 homes within a half-mile radius. There are 18 undeveloped lots in the same proximity. There are more than 100 homes altogether within the half-mile radius. If I could just show some slides of homes, is that all right?
Dr. Tackett, and I apologize for not prefacing or stating the instructions probably a little bit more clearly, but it's three minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't understand that.
But council members, in a moment when we get to that hearing item, we'll have the opportunity to ask you questions.
Okay,
So
thank you. I apologize.
And we'll go to Bill Cook, item 104.
Mayor Quicker and council. Bill Cook. I work for Golden West Telecommunications. I'm the manager of wireless services for them. And since that is my title and my job, I have basically been tasked with being the project manager for this project. I've worked extensively with Janelle at Fisk Land, and you have seen some of what we've proposed. Many revisions of landscape plans. I feel like we've done a fairly good job of addressing the issues. I would like to clarify one item that was brought up earlier about the wall, and I did have a conversation with Jay and did mention that when we were first approached, we thought Wallwood, which is the headquarters office of Golden West, would be a suitable location, but because of the constraint of their search ring, it needed to be closer to Rapid City. So actually, the radius, I'm pretty close to thinking it was five miles outside of Rapid City. So that brought us to choosing and looking at the site on Tower Road. The other item that I think Mr. Muir did not mention was that this dish requires a significant amount of bandwidth to the internet, and there are very few locations in western South Dakota that can provide that, our facility at Tower Road being one of them. I really appreciate the time that you've taken to listen to my comments, and I would be available for questions later if anyone would like to ask.
Thank you. We do not have any further speaker request forms on items 91 through 106. The public hearing will remain open. We will now proceed to the continued public hearing consent items, items 91 through 94. Is there any items that anyone would like to see removed? Jerry, you have your light on? Okay. Anybody like to remove any of these items? I know that 93 had been discussed earlier as an item to be removed. Would anyone like to remove 93 or any of the other items? Okay. Item 93 has been removed. Do we have a motion to continue 91, 92, and 94 to February 21?
So moved.
Motion by Davis, second by Brown. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 93, Gary, can you read this into the record for us?
Yes, Mayor. A request by Centerline for Lazy PG Land Company Incorporated for a variance to the subdivision regulations to waive the requirement to install water and sewer along Catherine Boulevard as per Chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Located east of 5th Street, lying south of East Stoomer Road and on the north side of East Stoomer Road west of Shelby Avenue. Move to approve.
We have a motion by Brown and a second by Wright. We have any discussion? Any discussion? Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
We're now at the end of continued public hearing consent items. Can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion by Davis, second by Peterson. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're now on consent public hearing items, which is items 95 through 103. Do we have any of those items that anyone would like to approve for separate consideration? They are all on consent, 95 through 103. Jordan Mason?
Yes, specifically 95.
Okay. 95, anything else? Okay. Can we have a motion to approve 96 through 103?
Second.
Motion by Roberts, second by Peterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 95, Gary Brown, can you read this into the record for us? Item 95.
Yes, Mayor. A request by Spurlick Consulting Incorporated for Central Resources Incorporated for an amendment to the comprehensive plan to change the land use designation from commercial to industrial. Located on the south side of East Anamosa Street, southeast of the intersection, East Anamosa Street and North Creek Drive. I move to approve. Second. With steps.
Motion by Brown, second by Roberts. Any discussion? Jordan?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to talk about 95 and also 105 because these two are related with the rezoning and also change to the land use designation from commercial to industrial. But this part of town, something that I just wanted to bring up for consideration, we have medium density residential, we have commercial, industrial, light industrial, and heavy industrial all within the proximity of a few hundred feet of each other. As we're talking about strategic goals and also looking at comprehensive plans, frankly, this appears to be the definition of spot zoning to me. We have spots of commercial, we have spots of industrial, and so forth. This is something that I guess, given that this is in North Rapid, I do feel an obligation to point out that this is going to have an effect on the area, and I guess I would like some consideration from my colleagues on this. Thank you.
Any further discussion on item 95? The motion is to approve. Bonnie Peterson.
If I could ask Mr. Mason a question. Mr. Mason, I'm looking at the aerial photograph that is linked to the area, and the area to the left, lower left, is that housing in there? It looks like a lot of cars and stuff.
Yes, to the lower left, that is a junkyard, and that is zoned heavy industrial. If you go to your lower right, that is medium density residential, and right in between is actually commercial.
Okay.
And it's literally going from left to right. It changes from industrial, commercial to medium density residential.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any further discussion on item 95? The motion is to approve. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have a roll call, please.
Sasso. Davis. Peterson. Roberts.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Wright. Laurenti. Nordstrom. Mason. Doyle. Motion carries.
Item 104, Gary Brown. Item 104, Gary, can you read this?
Is appeal of the Planning Commission's decision on a request by Fisk Land Surveying and Consulting Engineers for Hughes Network System LLC for an initial and final commercial development plan to allow a transmission facility in the General Agriculture District located at 3840 Tower Road. Move to approve.
Can we have a clarification on the motion before we seek a second? You're moving to uphold the appeal or overrule the appeal and approve the placement?
I will just yield to the floor. Sorry.
Okay. We do not have a motion. We'll go to Bonnie Peterson.
I have a couple of questions. And I think maybe growth management might be Brett to ask. Is in this, if this would be, if we approve the project, would this include trees already? The way that it's written, that the trees are part of like stipulations, so to speak, that the trees would be required?
There are a number of landscape plans here. The last one that you have is going to be on the February 3rd tag, and that shows the 7 evergreen trees on the southern side of the property. So if that's the landscape plan that you want, then you should make sure that you approve it subject to that landscape plan.
Okay, well, that's what I was wanting to know, is if, I was given some conflicting information. I didn't know if we had to add the stipulations ourselves, and also if you know of other things that would also need to be added tonight, of other concerns. It's a little different because y'all usually add the stipulations for us. And
right, yeah, and this has gone through several revisions between the Planning Commission and here, and it would be my recommendation that if the last item that was approved, the last landscape plan was that they submitted as the one you want to approve, that you make reference to that directly. Other than that, there aren't any other items that I can see that have been submitted that you would need to address.
okay, the other question I had, and it's probably not for you, but and I don't know exactly who to ask, because we're allowing a variance where they can go 27 feet up to the road, and if this satellite is or if this dish is communicating with satellites, I'm sure there's some safety requirement of distance, and I'm wondering if we're exceeding those or if we're just barely meeting them, or if there's any consideration for, it seems like when, it's kind of like how you're not supposed to be too close to your cell phone for the long-term consequences. So here you have this huge dish, and we're moving it closer to a public road. And I'm just wondering if we have any information on that as far as the safety and what those distance recommendations are, and if we're exceeding them or barely meeting them.
When it comes to this type of communication equipment antennas, I would defer to the experts at the applicants in particular to answer those questions. Certainly, there are a number of studies that you can look at depending on the type of equipment, whether or not they produce anything that is deemed harmful. In this case, I'm sure that they've done their homework and probably can answer that question for you.
I'd be glad to hear what they have to say, but also it's, you can come on up, sir. Sorry. But also, we sometimes, you have to watch who's guarding the hen house.
So it's between the feed horn and the antenna. You don't want to be in that area. That's the danger zone. So that's the reason for the fence around it. We don't want people walking around it. So.
Do you know what the minimum requirement is? Are you saying you don't want to be on the dish itself?
You don't want to be inside between the feed horn and the dish itself. That's correct.
So so if you could stand outside of the dish?
Yes.
I don't know where the feed horn is or what, I don't know.
It's the middle point that's kind of sits out in front. The technical guys,
Okay.
sometimes I translate for them.
Okay, sure.
But it's directional. It's like, it's not broadcasting, it's like pointing a gun. So it's pointing up towards the satellite and the radiation is going that way. There's much bigger dishes right off the interstate going by Somerset. And they're significantly, one of them is more than twice the size of this. And all those comply, because I actually represent one of the companies that did one of those.
Well, I know sometimes we comply and then, it took years to prove that if you live next door to a electricity transmission station, that there was actually hazards from doing that. So that was a concern, and I apologize for not asking sooner. I guess I didn't connect the fact that it was going to be up so close to the road. Okay, thank you.
Jerry Wright, we do not have a motion on the floor, so. Jerry?
Well, I can't make the motion, but I'm going to speak, so I'm going to speak and let someone else make the motion.
You can make the motion and hold the floor.
Is there any reason why this dish has to be white? Can it be painted a color that would camouflage it? I know you don't have invisible paint, but there's got to be, does it have to be white like a snowball in a green hill? Can it be painted battleship gray, or can it be ACU, BDU, or some color I'm familiar with? Pine tree green with a little brown in it? Or we could have a changing color with the seasons, or what can we do?
Go to Mr. Muir. Did I pronounce your last name correct?
Yes, Muir.
Muir, okay.
I would have to go back to the technical guys because they've all been white so far, and people have asked about painting, and there's an issue relative to the color it is, and so they're all white at this point.
So we had them tan and gray, if I remember right. So would you check on that? And if it's possible, let's look into it.
I would.
I support you, but I'd like that looked at. Have you guys looked at that, staff? Camouflage paint, some color, something would change it?
I haven't here. I've looked at that on other buildings before. In fact, there is a color blue that matches the sky that you can actually paint
Bingo.
buildings. It can also be a hazard if you're putting up towers, so you've got to be very careful what you do. And I certainly wouldn't want to get into the technical aspects of whether or not you can paint this antenna or not. I think it probably would affect the reception.
If it does not affect the technical performance of the antenna, we will paint it.
Do we get to hear what color it's going to be, even after we approve it? Well, I mean, I don't want it pink. Or off-white. I mean, realistically, is there some way that come back to staff and say, yeah, we can do this? And
sure,
I'm going to support you on it, but I want to see if we can do something that makes it a little more livable.
Sure, we'll be happy to.
I know we've got cell towers look like pine trees. They're kind of phony, but they look.
I've seen
like
those.
Okay,
we will do that.
Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to deny the appeal.
Okay, we have a motion by Davis and a second by Wright to deny the appeal and to allow the installation of the transmission facility. We'll go to Steve Laurenti. Steve?
If I could have Mr. Mueller, if you would, please, sir. Thank you. My question is, I've heard from a few people who live and I've been out there where the ones off I-90, the larger ones, the power supply for those, is that a part of that structure is a power supply, and I've heard that those are fairly noisy when they kick on or when they kick off. So I'm asking you technically, are there issues with power supply and how that, is there noise situations with those, or is that a backup generator to power?
That's probably the de-icing on the antenna. Ours is a gas powered de-icing.
So there
are blowers within the antenna. That's what's causing the noise that you hear.
Okay, so for us, that would be fairly profound. I'm assuming that there's some anticipation that that would be used often in this area with the winters that we have.
Could be if there's ice.
Okay. Is there significant noise?
I wouldn't say it was significant for the 6.3 meter, no.
Is there any technical data as to decibel levels within a certain feet on these?
I don't
power
have
supplies?
those available to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
We'll go to Bonnie Peterson.
Thanks. I was wanting to know if we could make a friendly amendment that if you're going to deny this, that it's the understanding that the landscaping and the would be done in the and the camouflage paint or whatever, and whatever things that I know Mr. Cook has been talking with some residents there, and whatever they've agreed to do verbally, that we include that in what we're legally agreeing to.
Okay, we have a friendly amendment. Before we accept or talk about the friendly amendment, I'd like to ask Brett for clarification to make sure that we're not redundant on any aspect of this. What part of the landscaping plan is now being required? Is there any requirements, or is it something that the applicants brought forward as an offer?
You know, the original case that went before Planning Commission had a lesser amount of landscaping than what has come to you recently. It would be my recommendation that you use the landscaping plan listed here on February 3rd, the latest, with the 7 pine trees in your approval. So I would make that clarification.
So and that's okay with you. So the friendly amendment would be to use the latest landscaping plan that's been presented and to have vision-friendly paint? Is that what,
Yeah, I don't want to use camouflage. You don't want to look like a tactical site, but something that would be environmentally enhancing. Camouflage in the sense of it's going to hide it, disguise it, versus any color. It might be white, blue, green, or something like that. Appropriate.
okay, we have, and is that amendment, has the amendment been, it's a friendly amendment, has it been accepted by the motion maker?
Yes.
No.
Okay, it has not been accepted by the motion maker.
Can I question why it hasn't, just to make sure that I'm on the right page on the friendly amendment, so I'm sure that I understand it? I'm not questioning the landscaping. The paint, I'm questioning because it sounds as though we're dictating something that we don't know can be done technically at this point. So that if you can phrase it in a way that if it's available without intimidating the integrity of the system,
I'm okay with that.
I can accept the friendly amendment.
That was my intent. Thank you.
Excuse me, can I say one more thing? Or is it?
One moment. At this point, sir, you would have to receive a question from a member of the council, since public comment is closed. Joel, can I go to you on this? Do we have, is this clear from a legal standpoint, this friendly amendment? Shelley?
If the person taking the minutes isn't clear on it, it would be nice if you could have a clarification or somehow word it in a way that everyone could understand.
Let's do this. We really have 2 friendly amendments that have been bound up in one. So let's take the easy one first. We have a friendly amendment to use the latest landscaping plan, and that's okay with,
acceptable.
and that's okay with the motion maker and the seconder. And so now that's been added to. So Now we need clarification on the paint. Jerry Wright, would you please clarify your intent?
Okay. If technically allowed without affecting the quality or the need of the machine, I would like to see it painted in a color that would minimize its visual impact to the area.
I can accept
Okay? And that's been accepted by the motion maker, and you were the seconder.
Yes.
Okay?
And as the motion maker, or the motion writer, got it. Okay.
Okay?
Just a minute, before we call the question, Mr. Cook I'd like to ask him a question. Do you have a question?
Thank you. I still don't see how the benefit to the city has been addressed at all. And it seems to me it's important that there is no financial benefit or anything else. It's like we're doing a favor for HughesNet. The business that I operate up there, a few hundred yards from the installation, produces tens of thousands of dollars of sales tax that directly contribute to the operation of the city and benefit the city. I just don't see how this benefits us in any way. It's just doing a favor to these folks because they like that location. It'll be something that'll be a little thorn under the saddle for years to come, I believe. I'll probably get over it, but there's a lot of people going to be seeing this and dealing with this for many years to come. Property values, all kinds of issues. Thank you.
Jerry, you still have the floor.
I yield, I'm done.
Okay. Ron Sasso?
I myself smiling here just because that was actually what I was going to ask. Aside from the goodwill to use Network and Golden West, what would you see as the financial benefits and overall benefits to Rapid City and Rapid City residents?
I'm going to address this and then let Jim or Bill fill in if I miss something. It's a benefit to Golden West because it's using the major utility function. It's a national customer coming to them. You do get some increased property tax on it. But I'd specifically like to address this issue of there's no benefit to Rapid to have satellite internet. Now, I'm going to confess here, I don't live in Rapid, I live just north. I can't get hardline internet at my house. There's a lot of houses just outside of Rapid, and there's probably some in Rapid, in the city proper, that have to use satellite services like Wild Blue and things like that. That infrastructure it becomes a benefit to this area because there are areas, because of the rock and the nature of the trees and the lots, that you don't have high-speed internet. And it's a benefit, I think, to the entire region for the rural areas that are isolated to have high-speed internet too. Rapid City is a hub. A lot of communications run through here, a lot of services run through here, and being part of that service to this area, I think is important. So I don't think you can be just dismissive and say nobody in this area uses it, because I'm a couple miles north of the Windmill truck stop, and we use satellite internet. Everybody in my development who wants high-speed internet uses that or data cards.
And would this basically benefit the entire Black Hills region?
Yeah, it would be beneficial. The Hughes network is going to be the entire western area, if I'm correct.
It covers all of the U.S.
Covers all the U.S. So it's going to be available services throughout the Black Hills, western South Dakota.
Specifically, and I know it's a little harder to say specifically this dish, but I guess if you could clarify that, if it's possible to say this would be covering more of the Black Hills area, region, or...
And the question being, if I understand it, is whether this dish would provide services to western South Dakota as part of the
Yes.
population it serves. Well, Yeah.
Our issue is Rapid City.
Yeah. and
It'll provide.
You can step up here, Jim, too, so you're on the mic.
Sir, if
As-
you could just identify yourself for the record so we
Sure,
get the
Jim
tapes
Muir,
correct.
Hughes Network Systems. As users sign up, they'll be put on different gateways, and so there could be people in this area on this gateway. They could be on a gateway in Missoula, Montana. So it's designed to cover all the U.S. So will there be other subscribers on the Rapid City gateway that are not in South Dakota or in Rapid City? The answer would be yes.
Thank you. Ron?
No further questions. Thank you.
Charity Doyle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm kind of humored by the conversation in that we are sitting up here determining what the property is going to, how the property is going to benefit Rapid City. I think the thing that's been left out of the equation is property rights. We have, and this is what I just share some points with you that I discovered in my research. This is a land that is zoned general ag. Telecommunications is a conditional use. It's allowable on general agricultural land. I don't know why it's zoned that way, but it is zoned that way. And I guess, you know, the way they put it to me is they call it Tower Road for a reason. I don't know if this is an appropriate use for up there. I'm not sure what is. I think when I looked into it, the homes came later. So the towers were there first. The homes came later. And, you know, we're talking about blocking out views. We're talking about these kinds of things. But within, if that land were to be zoned residential, they could have a 35-foot high house there. This is going to be, I think, only 28 feet. So I think the blocking of the view is minimized in this case. They have rights within their property that they're going above and beyond to minimize the impact or the feeling of it to adjacent neighbors. And I know that these are kind of the checks and balances that staff go through to look at these kinds of things. And we do need to take that into consideration. But the main point for chiming in is that I know Mr. Tackett has some things that he would like to say. And Mr. Tackett, I would really like to give you that opportunity if you would mind coming back up to the podium. I know there were some things you got cut off, and I'd certainly like to give you the opportunity to express those.
I really appreciate it, and I apologize for my earlier transgression. I didn't understand about the time limit. If I could just read a brief summary, it kind of deals with these issues. The area currently has antennas. There's no doubt about it, okay? But we have an opportunity in rezoning an area. We can rezone it for what the area has become, or we can rezone it for what it was in the past. We have an opportunity to improve the appearance of Rapid City instead of putting another structure that makes it look more industrial. You know, across from McDonald's, they have the power substation. They, I think, were required or volunteered to put a brick-like wall around it to shield the substation from the view of the people in that area because it would look very industrial. I live in a neighborhood. Yeah, there are some radio towers there, but I live in an area that's becoming more and more developed. There are many nice homes, and there are more to come. And we have an opportunity as a council to look forward and require more of somebody, especially if they're asking for a variance, where their structure will be even closer to the road than it normally would be. That Tower Road is visited by many, many people on a daily basis. There are many people that walk by there. There are many people that ride bicycles by there. It's not just me who looks at this and is aware of this. And we have an opportunity here to say, okay, if you're going to put a satellite dish up, I want you to really shield it and make it aesthetically pleasing, so that as our city grows, it grows better, it looks better, instead of saying, well, there are towers there, so we'll just put up more utility structures and not worry about it. So I would just ask that of you, and I appreciate the time very much. Thank you.
I guess I have reservations about, people have heard me talk about my experience as an engineer and some of the interesting planning strategies we have used here in Rapid City. When I moved back, I raised eyebrows on multiple occasions as I would drive around town. But the fact is that it's zoned a certain way now, and unless Golden West gets rid of that property and we have an opportunity to rezone it, I'm not sure that it is, I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, appropriate perhaps to thwart the progress in the rights of a property owner. I mean, you've heard the saying, if you like the view, buy it. That land was empty for quite some time, and I don't know if now we're just having reservations that we didn't take that into consideration. I'm not sure. But what I am sure of is that the people that we pay to look into these kinds of things have worked with these gentlemen over here to make sure that the impact to the neighborhood is minimized. I have no problem with looking forward as far as what can we do to get up to date, if you will, with our zoning practices. I do think it's a conversation that is long overdue. But with respect to this particular issue, I am inclined to follow staff's recommendation. The problem is that we create these conditions, and then we want to punish people for the conditions which we create, and that's the challenge I have. I don't think it's prudent to punish these men and thwart the progress that they want to make with their own property. And I know that if the hat were on the other side, you would definitely want that same consideration. So something to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have two quick comments and just kind of a quick recap. But the question was, what does the city gain? And I just want to point out that, I believe we gained the infrastructure. Last year in August, we actually declared that information technology was admissible as a capital improvements project and considered infrastructure. And that was ordinance number 5640. We passed that, if I remember, unanimously through first and second reading. The other thing I just wanted to touch on, and this is just coming from my military experience, and I just want to throw out a word of caution. In dealing with any sort of signalization, especially the attenuation of that signal, we want to be really careful about stipulating any sort of materials that we might want to add to that. A lot of people don't realize, but especially dealing with an antenna signal, especially with a satellite dish that's probably broadcasting around the C-band in the high gigahertz range, the sort of paint that you can use can really screw up that signal. Even simple things like the sort of plant material, surprisingly, for example, if you're down in South America, there are certain trees and the type of bark they have will absorb that signal. So I just want to throw out a word of caution because there's actually a lot of thought and engineering that goes into that. So I just want to throw out a word of caution before we start, throwing out these stipulations that we want this sort of tree because it could really screw up their signal. Just going to throw that out. Thanks.
That puts into question how focused the radiation is. It seems like that spreads all around Hillsdale.
We'll go to Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Bringing up the Navy days, we used to have haze gray painted on our antennas, so there is the potential. But anyway, and then also, I don't want to go in the area of having to cover these satellites dishes as well, so I know that's another option that's available. That's not where the direction I'm going to be going. Mr. Culverson, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You wanted to address something there. I would like to, if it's all right with the council, I'd like to hear what he had.
You could ask a specific question, Richie.
Okay. Mr. Culverson, you own the motel up there, is that correct?
Yes, that is quite correct, the Big Sky Lodge.
Mr. Culberson, from the map that I'm looking at, or the aerial view that I'm holding or looking at, is that you're just off of that map, is that correct?
Just off of that.
Just off of that.
We're to the south.
And I apologize to you, Mr. Culberson, I did not take a tour of your specific site angle. I have worked up with your neighbor to the north there that had a janitorial service up there, and they did have a tower structure in that area.
Yeah, that was removed, I think, 10 or 12 years ago.
Correct, yes. And so I remember working for that in business up there and having a view of that area. So would you kind of explain your concern again to me from your angle or your site angle?
Well, it will, my basic concerns are when you give a variance, I feel that that sets a precedent so there can be more towers installed in the immediate area. And the evidence of that is almost anywhere where you see these type of towers, there's not one. Maybe there starts to be one, but pretty soon there's a whole array of them, a whole cluster of them. So I think this project is going to grow up there. And I didn't even think about the electromagnetic field or anything like that before, but that is very true. And some people may smirk about it or think that it's not an issue, but it is an issue. It's a very strong signal being sent. And it's going to be going, right over my hotel up to a satellite, and then it's not receiving anything. It's actually transmitting, so that's a lot of power. But there's no benefit that I see financially. The beneficiaries are rural. The facility should be rural, in my opinion. And that's basically it. That's how I feel about it.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the council for indulging me the opportunity to ask Mr. Culberson a couple of questions. I just wanted to go on record here that the landscaping opportunity that we have to be presented in here looks to me to satisfy a lot of the concerns that the neighbors have. And when Alderwoman Doyle talks about the property rights, I have to lean to that direction as well. And I understand the concerns from the neighboring viewpoints or their site angles that they have to look at through this. So I understand their rights as well, but I believe Golden West is and Hughes network system is doing all that they can to address the concerns. And so unless there's some other comments that need to be coming forward on this, I can't see any reason why we can't support the motions that are on the floor. Thank you, Mayor. I'll yield the floor.
We'll go to Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you. I have a question for, I don't know if it's Hughes Network or Golden West or both. One of the questions is, I was told by one of the neighbors that they would not be able to get your service that you're offered to rural areas. Is that correct?
Not to my knowledge.
So one of the neighbors could sign up for your service?
Yes.
For internet service right there?
One of you could answer that on the record, please.
I guess that's
Mr. Cook.
guy here. What they would need would be a view of the southern sky. So just like your DirecTV dish or your Dish satellite dish, they can't be blocked by trees or any other obstruction.
Okay, so the service would be available to people right there and right around the area. Okay, the other question I have for you, you've been doing this in other cities. Have you had to do more than just put trees in other cities? Like put like brick fencing or something more attractive?
We have not. We have put traditionally a fence around the site.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, just for clarification, the service available would be through Wild Blue?
No, would be through HughesNet.
Through HughesNet?
Correct.
Okay.
Different company.
And now we'll go to Ron Sasso.
I will be actually, I probably shouldn't speak so quickly because I think there's a little confusion probably at this point with what we would be voting on. But I think based on the technology and also looking at Sanford Underground Research Facility and what we're looking at wanting to bring more people into the Black Hills area, into this region, from the technology standpoint, I believe that is a plus. As far as the radio frequency, I think based on what it appears, as long as it's fenced off, that's okay. The property is zoned accordingly for the purpose, and it's just the distance that is being the exception. So I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. We do not have any further lights? Yes, we do. Okay, no, we don't. All right. Any further discussion? The motion on the floor is to approve with the two amendments. So everyone understands the motion? Okay. All in favor? We have somebody trying to... The motion is to deny the appeal and to allow the transmission facility to go in. That includes the two friendly amendments. Okay. Did anyone else want to speak? We've been having a problem with the lights. So, okay. All in favor, say aye.
No.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries with 1 no from Bonnie Peterson. Okay. Item 105. Jordan?
Thank you, Sam. Item 105 is second reading ordinance 5791, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, and this is rezoning from, I believe, general ag to light industrial, and this is at the same location, south of Menards, located on the south side of East Anamosa site, southeast of the intersection of Southeast Anamosa and North Creek Drive. And I'll yield to the floor.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Do we have a motion or discussion?
I make a motion to approve this.
Okay, we have a motion by Roberts and a second by Laurenti to approve. Any discussion? John Roberts.
You know, I saw this come across the Planning Commission, and yes, there is some residential to the east of this, but in my opinion, you know, for light industrial, I think this is a good area for it. If you actually look directly to the south, we already have some industrial. And I think once the road goes through and there's that corridor there to Highway 44, I think it's a good area for industrial. And hopefully some of the residential to the east will become more industrial, I hope. We need something close into town for light industrial, in my opinion. I'm sure that that's not the same as some other people on the council, but in my opinion. So anyway, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries with 2 noes from Laurenti and Mason. Did I miss anyone? Okay. Item 106. Jordan?
Sorry, item 106 is second reading ordinance 5797, and this is rezoning from general commercial district to high-density residential district, and this is located south of East St. Joseph Street between Elm Avenue and Birch Avenue, and I'll move to approve.
Do we have a second? We have a motion by Mason and a second by Davis. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 107, bill list. Pauline.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The bill list has not changed from that which is attached. The total amount is $7,033,732.85.
Okay, we have a motion by Roberts and a second by Nordstrom to approve. Any discussion? Alderman Sasso?
Just want to abstain on that.
Okay, please state the reason why.
Yes, I've got a payment in there for a rebate, washer rebate, so that's all. Thank you.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries with one abstention from Ron Sasso and one from Jerry Wright. Do we have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion by Mason and a second by Roberts to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.